decisions to make. Said, not our problem, y'all fix it. Y'all the charter schools, y'all fix it. And I have to recuse because one of their principals is one of my former principals.
We'll be making motions early in discussions.
I've read all this stuff, but I was like, I totally understand why y'all did that, cause you don't wanna own it. Let us own it.
Bless you.
The whole thing is so, but if it goes
Let us
bad,
know.
I know.
I don't care.
When you find something out, let us know.
It's gonna go
Okay.
badly. If it goes badly, that will get attributed to my child.
I mean, I don't understand why they did.
In the other schools.
Cook dinner for the teachers, cook breakfast for the teachers this morning.
We have bagels.
There you go.
Teacher
Nice
Appreciation Week.
spread.
All right, Joe, you ready? All right, let's start with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good morning. I'm going to start by reading the ethics statement. Board members are reminded that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this advisory board. Does any member of the advisory board have any known or apparent conflict of interest with any matters that are coming before us today?
I'm gonna recuse from connections and the implementation planning part of the access grant.
All right. Anyone else? If during the course of the meeting you become aware of any apparent or actual conflict of interest, please bring those matters to my attention. It'll be your duty to abstain from discussion on the matter and voting on the matter. The Charter Schools Advisory Board mission statement is that our board works to ensure the existence of high-quality charter schools in North Carolina. I want to take a moment to say a special appreciation in it for all of our teachers and charter schools and all schools around the state. It is National Teacher Appreciation Week. I know not everybody celebrates it this week, but it is National Teacher Appreciation Week. And so we want to, for all the teachers that are teaching right now and not listening to this broadcast, but we want to make sure that we let them know that they are deeply appreciated. So as of right now, we have a couple items to approve. I'll seek approval of the April minutes as well as our agenda. Why don't we start with the April minutes? We also are going to separately approve the called meeting minutes. We had a called meeting, I believe last Friday before last. So first on the April minutes.
Ashley, did you see that one note? I make a motion that we approve the April minutes.
I seconded.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Do we have anyone on the phone today? Heather?
Lynn might be calling you.
Just heard somebody talk, but the volume was way down. Here we go.
I think Heather's not calling.
This is Lynn Kroger.
Perfectly
Hey, Lynn.
reasonable that Heather's not.
Hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, great. And we'll also take I'll take a motion regarding the called meeting.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes for the call meeting.
Second.
All right, been properly moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. So at this time, if you could focus on the agenda, we're gonna have our state board updates. Dave is not here. He's thankfully home from the hospital, but recovering. Ashley Baccaro is going to present for us. And then we have some amendment requests as well. Ashley will also present that. We'll discuss the performance framework, have a presentation from Chatham Charter, and then we'll hear from Mr. Whalen regarding the grant recommendations. That'll take us through to lunch. And after that point, we will have our presentation from Dr. Tomberlin and our discussion around connections, followed by our RTO update from Dr. Williams. One question I have, Ms. Baccaro, if obviously 10:15 is a hard stop for anything, if we finish anything before who, like, let's say we finish by 9:30. Could we have Jay come earlier? Oh, he's
Yeah,
right
I
there.
think Jay-
He's right there.
Yeah, that would be possible.
I don't know if we'll do that. That's a lot of work
Okay.
to do that quickly, but especially given that it's already
We
9:10.
may could do what about, Dr. Williams, do the RTO update?
I'd have to check with her. I know she was waiting on some final numbers this morning,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. Well, we'll just try to stay flexible as need be. All right. Motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
All right. All right. So it's been properly moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay. Great. So agenda's approved, and we'll hear from Ms. Becerra regarding state board updates.
Good morning, Chair Quigley, Vice Chair Walker, and members of the board. So last week, the state board had their May meeting. There are a few items on the agenda pertaining to charter schools. They did hear the revised charter school application and rubric recommendation. They voted on that action on first read, and there was no discussion surrounding that item. So the recommendations that you have previously made regarding changes to that application and the way the rubric stands will be in effect for this next application cycle. And I believe the application opens in the beginning of June. So during the summer, we'll hear some updates from Dr. Allen about that. They also heard the charter schools recommended for approval to open in 2020. There was some discussion on that, mainly surrounding the two Lake County schools. And they've asked for some further clarification on enrollment numbers with the surrounding schools in that area. So our office is working on trying to get those numbers to them. Then they heard from, yes,
Did they approve any, or are they waiting?
they're waiting, so they just discussed it, yeah. And next month they will do approvals. They also heard the North Carolina Connections Academy amendment, and as you know, they decided to pass that back to you. So North Carolina Connections, they will not be presenting today since you've already heard from them. They've had a presentation before, but you will have time on the agenda this afternoon in which you need to discuss the issue and make a recommendation for the state board. I believe they will probably take that up in a special called meeting prior to their June meeting. And finally, they heard the NC Access Subgrant Allotment Policy, which was approved. Yep, everything was approved for that. And then Hope Charter's, their official request to relinquish, which we've talked about before, was approved. So that was the state board updates from last month. Are there any questions about that? Okay, I did want to touch upon the summer meetings, just to get any feedback from you for the dates. We have on the calendar for June 10th and 11th. I do not believe we will need a 2-day meeting, so it looks like it will be June 10th, which would be Monday. If you have any, right now, it looks like I have another RTO report most likely, whatever amendments are pending, but not a lot on the agenda that I am aware of right now. So if you have any, suggestions of anything you'd like to hear from or any divisions in DPI, just let me know. But I did want to let you know that looks like it will just be a 1-day meeting. And then in July, we had.
Can we just pause there? Is that going to work for people? Because that is a really hard day for me. That's the day before the last day of school. I won't be able to be there, for sure.
I'm out.
Because that's like our awards stuff, I think.
What do you mean, June?
June 10th.
June 10th.
What about the other schools, Cheryl? Are you guys
Cheryl, what's
done
your
by
last
then?
day?
Mine's not until the 22nd, so 21st. We started late. It's a long story.
I mean,
Bruce?
I'm good. Yeah, I can do either. Doesn't matter.
okay.
I can do either.
Do we think we have to have an in-person meeting? Could we do a phone call?
At this point, I don't know that we have a ton on the agenda.
17.
That's something I could definitely discuss with Dave. I don't know if there are other items that maybe he had in mind, but that's certainly a possibility.
What month were we thinking we wouldn't need a meeting?
August.
In August, you usually don't have a meeting in August.
August, that's right.
I remember one year we didn't have one in June or August.
I can't do the 10th, but
Was
I
that
could
this
do the
year?
17th.
This year it would be like deja vu.
You could do the 17th?
I could do the 17th.
Couldn't do,
Can everybody do the
Good.
seventeenth?
Do we have to do the 17th? Could we get away with just doing it in July?
I'll do the 17th. I don't like call-ins either.
Well,
For, wait, which one for the 17th?
June.
The
June 17th instead of the 10th. I do think it's a good idea to have a June scheduled meeting. I'm a little concerned about state board meeting and throwing something back to us with recommended approvals. There
And
was
the
a,
RTO process.
yeah.
June
There was,
17th?
Let's do the 17th.
Is the room
Everybody
available?
do
Can we
seventeenth?
do the 17th?
I'd have to look, I could look if you guys prefer the June 17th. I would just need to make sure the room's available and make sure there's nothing else conflicting on the calendar.
Yeah, June 17th. I mean, I don't necessarily have to be there either, but I'd like to.
That's
All
what
right.
we're talking about.
Yeah.
So let me look, I can put that down as a preferable date, and then we can, at the office, we can look into it if that works for everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then in July, we usually have the meeting at the North Carolina Association for Public Charter Schools Conference. That's taking place in Cherokee this year from July 21st to the 22nd. So we're planning on having the meeting either that Monday or that Tuesday, which would be the 22nd or the 23rd. Is there any discussion regarding that? Will most of you plan on being there?
I'll be there.
I won't.
yes.
22nd would be preferred, if I may say that, but
Okay.
I would agree. I can be there if that's where we have the meeting.
That's a haul for you.
I might could force myself to
No,
go.
I'm like, if everybody's gonna be there, then I'll be there. We'll take our family vacation.
Cherokee's fun.
I mean, I'm gonna be there.
But will there be enough of us to
Have a quorum.
fight?
Who can be there?
I think I could.
1, 2, 3.
Since
4,
OCS is
5,
paying for the travel.
6. That's 6.
That's the quorum.
Is Lynn gonna
I'm not
be?
gonna be able to be there, because that's right when our school starts, and all our teachers come back.
Oh.
So Lynn can't be there.
Tammy can't be there.
What about Heather? Heather, we don't know.
Can someone call in? We need to vote. Things that we need to vote for.
That's the first day my staff comes back, so
What I'll do is perhaps I'll look into the June 17th date for the June meeting, and then I will touch base with you all via email regarding the July date and just get a tally of once you're, home and you can look at your calendars, and I can contact everyone that's not here and get an idea of who will be available, if that works.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay. All right, I think that's all I have for state board updates. And for summer planning meetings, are looking to those dates for you guys. Any questions? All right, I believe amendments is next. Is that right on the agenda?
Correct.
So I'll go straight into those if that's okay. All right. The first amendment comes from Lake Lure Classical Academy, and they are requesting to terminate their affiliation with Team CFA Foundation. So Lake Lure is a charter school located in Rutherford County. They serve grades K to 12. They began operating in 2010 under an affiliation agreement with Team CFA, and 9 years later, now they feel that that partnership is not necessary. It sounds like right now what Team CFA provides is one representative for the board of directors, and then also the websites, like the website platform. And the school is working on getting another board member to fill that role and rolling out another website. But besides that, there doesn't seem to be much management in that.
So they're,
They're not the CMO or EMO.
no.
right.
So,
No, it's
I
just,
think this could have been approved by OCS.
Yeah.
Cause it's just a name change, because Team CFA was not their CMO. But either way, just to make things easier, I move we recommend approval.
okay.
Second. Was CFA in their name?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And I think they're wanting to take classical out of their name too, right?
They have requested the name to change to Lake Lure Classical Academy.
Okay.
It just won't have that ending, Challenge Foundation Academy.
All right, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Aye.
All right. The next amendment is Westlake Preparatory Academy. They are scheduled to open in Lincoln County in August 2019. They received a one-year delay request in January of 2018. So when they open this coming fall, they will be in their second year of their charter. And they had originally, their original enrollment projections were 690 students. It would be K through 7. And they are revising that now to K to 6, and it will be 187 students. So-
K-6?
Yeah.
K-6, 187 students?
They were originally K-6, 615 for the first year, so now for the first year, since it's their second year, they're K-6, 187. They just having that much trouble getting enrollment?
No, it is because they have to operate in a temporary facility. I believe they're working on renovations and they're not gonna be done in time, so they've had to, obtain a temporary facility, which has clearly limited capacity. And so that's why they've adjusted to these numbers.
Looks like they just adjusted this coming year only. If you
Yeah.
look at years, then 3, 4, 5, they're back on this.
Back on their same
So they're
track.
saying in year 2, we can go from 187 students to 700?
It'd be 187 to 690, yeah. I guess that's because the facility would be ready then.
Do we know, like, do they have a wait list?
I do not know
Mr.
their,
Delay was already.
Sorry, I know this is a lot of questions.
yeah, no, I don't know what their waitlist numbers are right now, honestly.
I'd want to know that they have people standing out there chomping at the bit and they just can't get them in the building. Because to say you're going to go from 200 kids to 700 kids in 1 year, that's a lot. I'd really want to. Yeah, I'd really want to know that they had that they're turning people away because they can't get them in the building. Turning away about 500 people.
Right now, it looks like, based on the, let's see, this was the April report for enrollment, from Dr. Keebler for RTO. They had 320 applications.
Well, I don't want them to get paid for 615 in their first allotment, so I move that we recommend approval.
But are we approving the whole thing, or are we just approving the way for the
I
change
think
for year
it's
one?
just the change in year 1, because after that, it's the same as it was when we approved it before.
That kind of move, I mean, it takes the years and moves them down.
Bumps everything
Yeah.
down.
So will they
Ashley,
be able to go to the 600 the following year?
Yeah.
Okay.
The delay this year was because of facility? Facility in 2 years.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Okay. Movement School East?
All right, Movement School East, they were originally scheduled to open this fall in Mecklenburg County, and in September of 2018, we approved a one-year delay in the office, so now they are scheduled to open in fall 2020 in Mecklenburg County. They are, I believe, have they applied for the CSP? Yes. They have applied for the CSP grant, and they are requesting to implement a weighted lottery. So they are trying to maximize the probability that 50% of their students admitted through the lottery would be economically disadvantaged. And their criteria is an annual household income of $40,000 or less, or those who qualify for the National School Lunch Program.
I move we recommend approval of this amendment.
I have to recuse on this one.
I second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Invest Collegiate?
All right, and Best Collegiate, this is also a weighted lottery. They opened in 2014. They currently serve grades K to 12. They're a B-rated school that has exceeded growth the previous 2 years. And they are setting a goal of achieving 40% of students meeting the economically disadvantaged criteria by 2024. Same type of process that all of the weighted lottery schools are going through. We give them the same guidance in terms of how their policy would be implemented and the type of application process.
Move.
They have more than 40% now?
I don't know what their current, let's see.
The population of that school is, I'm reasonably sure, more than 40% right now.
This is the one in Asheville.
Oh, okay, I thought it was Charlotte.
Yeah, this is in Asheville, yeah. No, because their next year target is 33%, so they're not at 40% yet.
I move that we accept this amendment and approve it.
All right, any discussion? Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Queen City STEM School, usually we hear these enrollment increases earlier in the year, and this is just a later received one. This school operates in Mecklenburg County. They serve K through 8, and they are getting ready to begin their high school program. They began in 2015 and has maintained a B performance grade since opening. They are seeking state board approval to enroll greater than 30%. So as you know, the statute allows for up to 30% for schools that are not low performing. They are requesting, it would amount to a 39.38% increase. And there are 5 provisions that the school has to meet in order for the state board to approve if it chooses this type of enrollment increase. The first is that the actual enrollment of the charter schools is within 10% of its maximum authorized enrollment. So right now the school's current enrollment is 489 students, and per its original charter, the maximum authorized growth was 490. The charter school has commitments for 90% of the requested maximum growth. And right now they've presented evidence of 374 students on the school's wait list after enrolling the 775 students that they're seeking to grow to with the opening of the high school. The school cannot be low performing, and it is not low performing. It has to be in good financial standing. It's in good financial standing and in compliance with any other state laws and federal laws. And according to the school and from our office's knowledge, they're in compliance with all charter school laws and policies.
Move we recommend approval.
Second it.
Any discussion?
What grades are they adding this year, Ashley?
I believe they're just starting with 9th grade. They're gonna build each year.
So is all the growth in 9th grade, they're bringing in 300 9th graders?
Pardon me?
Is all the growth in 9th grade, they're bringing in 300 9th graders?
I don't know. I don't know if it's just the 9th grade or if they're gonna add additional classes to some of the other schools or some of the other grade levels. But it's just 9th grade, and then the next year they'll go to 10th and build up incrementally.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Alright, the last amendment is North Carolina Virtual Academy. So they, as you know, the school was started through legislation, and in the pilot legislation, there is a provision that reads, the maximum student enrollment in any participating school shall be no greater than 1,500 in the first year of operation, and may increase by 20% for each participating school up to a maximum student enrollment of 2,592 in the 4th year of the pilot. So DPI, the Financial Business Services, believes that means that the school is capped at 2,592 students. The school, North Carolina Virtual Academy, believes that it should be allowed to expand each year by that 20% that's allowed in statute in terms of enrollment growth, and it would be 20% for them because they are a low performing school. So that is the school's opinion, that they should each year be able to increase by 20%. In the legislation, there is a statement that says the State Board of Education may waive this maximum student enrollment threshold beginning in the 4th year of the school's operation. So right now, the school is asking that the State Board waive that cap and allow them to grow 20% each year.
What is their current enrollment, Ashley?
Their current enrollment is. Let's see, where is it? I believe right about 2,400, maybe a little bit over. The 20% would bring them to 2,834.
2,358.
Is their current?
So
Yeah.
current is 2358.
I asked them, I guess some of the background on this that's not readily apparent, I guess, is that, so when the legislature extended the pilot from 4 years to 8 years, they did it in a budget conference report that couldn't have amendments, couldn't have anything but an up or down vote when they did it. So they did it in the budget last year. And what I was told by the legislators that worked on it is that they meant when they extended the pilot from 4 years to 8 years to remove the cap and allow the 20%. They didn't do that. And so there's a bill running through right now that went through Senate Education yesterday that would remove the cap off of it as a technical correction to it. I think, and I guess we all got the letter from Matthew Tilley over the weekend. It was long, and I mean, very creative there. And you know, I'm not saying that it's wrong, but I just think it doesn't make sense if you do a 4-year pilot. I think if you do a 4-year pilot and then you do the 20% and then you cap it at what that 20% growth would be at that 4 years, and then you double the pilot for another 4 years, it makes sense that they really didn't want to have the cap still on. They just messed up and didn't strike through it. Now, the law is what the law is, but the state board can override that because they can waive the cap. And I think that since and if I remember correctly, originally, administratively, this was approved, right? And then when it started going through the process through FBS said, no, you can't. And so it goes back, but they were already starting to try to enroll students at the additional amount. So I think that maybe the best thing to do would be just to recommend to the state board that they allow the 20% growth while everything gets worked out. So that's my motion. I move we recommend to the state board that they waive the cap requirement and allow the 20% growth for the next school year.
This
Would
is a
that
low
apply to both of
performing
the
school.
virtuals?
No, just for virtual academy because Connections hasn't made a request.
They didn't ask for it.
Yeah.
This is a low performing school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but a low-performing school can grow by 20%.
20%.
Yeah, this is just their.
So we're just going to treat them like any other charter school.
Nobody has to go if they don't want to.
That's true for any charter school.
That's exactly right. So if they don't get the numbers, they won't get. If they were already told, business services told them they could do it, is that correct?
Well, I don't know that they told them they could do it, but when they entered the CSADM system where they input this information, they were allowed to grow that 20%.
Right.
And so they, based on, putting that information into the system, they were under the impression they could grow that 20% and began enrolling and marketing and that sort of thing.
I second Stephen's motion, recommending it to the state board and let them decide.
We would be making recommendations. Yes. Just to be clear,
I think we'll never
We're-
do the no recommendation thing again.
I told you all.
It
we
didn't
shouldn't do
work
that.
for
I
us.
told
Thank
you all
you.
not to do that. I want to
Yes.
say.
Yes.
So we shouldn't do that. I got outvoted.
And
We have to
Stephen,
talk about that for 45 minutes.
was your motion for this year, this
Not
next
June.
year to
Just
go
for
to?
this
My
year.
fault. I
everything
take
works out.
responsibility. I shouldn't have
Okay.
let that happen.
It's okay.
Any low performing school that we said no to about the 20%?
Well, we don't
I
get
don't
to
think
vote,
so.
we, they automatically get the 20%.
Yeah.
That's my feeling to allow it because I mean, frankly, I think if they were adding a high school, I would say no. If they were wanting to replicate, well, I guess it wouldn't matter. You can't replicate, but you know, if they were wanting to do something other than 20%, I think you could make a case that schools that are low performing should not get to grow at all, or should only get to grow 10%. But
That's not our call.
you know,
Yeah.
The other piece to this is, given the uncertainty around connections, there's likely to be some demand for crossover. I
No,
think
that's
Yeah,
true.
that's
That's a
that's
good
true.
point. That's a really
That's
good point,
true.
Joe. That's a really good point.
You're so astute. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in favor of it. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, motion carries. And then-
Aye.
So we'll make that recommendation to the state board. All right. 937, performance framework.
All right.
You should get a raise, Ashley.
Can we make that recommendation?
Right, a motion.
We recommended Dave Machado. I think OCS budget's tapped out.
Is she gonna get to go to,
They did get a
Tennessee
cubicle by the
on the
window.
state
now.
money?
Sure.
They did move up to the
They
sixth floor,
moved up
that's
to the
right.
sixth floor. They got a window. Got a window.
Windows are nice. All right, so this, one disclaimer before we get started, our office is still in the process of finalizing last year's data. So there could be, some minor changes, variances in the data, but if there are variances, the percentages of compliance are going to be like improved, they're going to go up. Just because right now, schools had the opportunity to submit to us areas that they wanted us to review, like certain measures, and we had a thorough amount of schools ask for those reviews, so it has taken us quite a long time to go through and look into that compliance data. So this is not the final data, but I think it should be very similar to what will finally be reported in the report that comes out after everything's compiled. And this again would be looking at the school performance from the 2017 to 18 school year. So first, we're gonna look at performance framework by the year, just some changes over the years. We're gonna look at state board goals and measures and how that aligns with the compliance from the 2018 performance framework. I'm gonna review some of the areas for growth that we noticed in the office in terms of compliance, and then we'll look at overall compliance numbers. So the 2018 Performance Framework Report analyzed data from the 2017 school year. We had 173 schools in operation. This year, we are currently going through the submission and review process for 184 schools that are currently operating. And next year, if all of the new schools, begin operation, we will have just under 200 schools taking part in this performance framework. This shows some of our charter school growth since the cap was listed in 2011. So we're getting very close to the 200 mark, and the performance framework provides our office a way of tracking and measuring and having reliable data for so many schools. Some of the rationale between the performance framework, which began in 2015, is having a clear and consistent annual measure of performance, providing feedback and transparency not only to the schools but to your board, to the state board, and to other stakeholders, and then outlining performance trends over time. We're just now starting to see some trends because it's just been a few years, but over time, hopefully we'll get more knowledge in terms of looking at performance trends. So the state board has their strategic plan goals that they set, and goal 2 is every student has a personalized education. Within that goal, we have an objective to increase the number of charter schools meeting academic, operational, and financial goals. And this is really what aligns with performance framework. Within that objective, there are 5 measures that directly relate to the performance framework. And this was recently changed, I believe, last summer, some of the wording in some of these measures. The first is the percentage of charter schools receiving a school performance grade of an A or a B. The second is those charter schools meeting or exceeding expected annual academic growth. The third is the percentage of charter schools meeting or exceeding all financial and operational goals as measured by the performance framework. And then the fourth is to decrease the number of charter schools meeting the General Assembly's definition of low performing. And finally, to decrease the number of charter schools meeting the definition of continually low performing. So thinking about those state board targets and what the data is looking like now for last year's performance framework, we're going to compare some of those targets. So the first target, our first measure was the school performance grade of an A or a B. The state board set the target at 43.5%, and our data shows 41.7% compliance. So just a few percentage points inching closer to the target. The second measure was meeting or exceeding expected annual academic growth. The state board set the target at 75%, and charter schools were at 68.7%. The next was meeting or exceeding expected annual academic growth. So what we just looked at now previously, but you can kind of see the trend, and we're not sure why, but there is a trend leading to a decrease each year in the number of schools that are meeting or exceeding expected growth. You can kind of see that there on the chart. The next measure is to meet or exceed all financial and operational goals, and this is achieved when you have a school has over 80% compliance in the operation criteria and 100% compliance in the financial criteria. The target was 90% and the actual was 83.7%. And last year, this is the first year with a target, so you can kind of see the change each year of the actual measures, but comparing it to the first year with a target of 90%.
What caused the decrease? What are you seeing that reflects the decrease between 16, 17, and 17, 18?
I think it's the review that the office did. So it appears that previous years' reviews might have looked mainly for, does a school have this policy or does a school have this document? And last year we really dug deep into making sure that everything was aligned with statute and policy and with the charter agreement. So there were some changes that need to be made. This year, I think the epicenter process is helping a lot because we can give that. Last year, if we were trying to work with a school to make improvements or change or work to get their numbers up so that they were meeting compliance, it was all back and forth via email or phone, which could prove difficult sometimes. Now, within the epicenter framework, we can just return that document with a note and they can get that automatic feedback. So I've noticed in terms of the reviews that I do that it's much easier for schools to, understand what might be missing.
So you think it's the learning curve is gonna be an improvement for this upcoming year, 18-19?
I think absolutely. In terms of decreasing the number of low-performing schools, the target was 25 and the actual was 28. And as you can see, there was definitely a decrease from last year in terms of the number of low-performing schools. In 2016, there were 37. And then for the number of continually low-performing schools, the target was 9, the actual was 28. So I think what you're seeing is that there happens to be there's a group of schools that just are in that CLP status that just can't seem to get out of the continually low performing. So these are looking at some of the data. These are some of the areas for growth that we've identified. And when we look at the measures, we're looking at operational, financial, and academic. So for those of you that might not have seen a report or don't work in schools, I've posted one on eBoard that just shows you the different measures. I believe there's a maximum of 41 measures that a school might be measured against for these three areas: operational, financial, and academic. Some of the data comes from our office, and then a lot of the data comes from various different offices, including, Title I, EC, the health, charter school health consultant, that sort of thing. For operational annual monitoring criteria, we had 85.5% exceeding or meeting goals. And this is where, again, I think we see more schools not meeting goals because of the thorough review that took place this year. An area for growth within operational criteria was the implementation of mandated programs. So this includes Title I, Title II, EC, school nutrition, and ELL. So our office does not, supply this data. This data comes to us from these relevant divisions, and the division itself sets what the compliance measure is going to be. So I think looking at a kind of in a problem-solving mindset, I think that improved communication between schools and divisions would be a good starting point to ensure compliance going forward. Some of these, like EC or ELL, a school might be marked non-compliant because they failed to turn in a required report on time, that sort of thing. So I think the compliance could definitely improve if there's greater communication and schools have a greater idea of where they're being, marked for compliance purposes. The other one is the official funded ADM within 10% of projected ADM. I'm not sure, why this proves troublesome for some schools, but it was 32% non-compliant, and this is really self-reported data that the school puts into the CSADM system. So it's not provided by our office or anybody else. It's when the school goes into the system and projects what their ADM will be.
I think part of the problem with that is that schools, whatever you put in there, you can't get paid for more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think very often schools don't, so let's say they can grow 30%. They don't go in and say, we're gonna take a number less than that because they're afraid they won't end up getting paid for kids.
Right.
And I don't think they understand that that's being graded.
Right.
They figure, well, we won't get paid for more than we have anyway, and I don't think they understand that that's being evaluated.
We understand that's being evaluated, but precisely the reason that you stated is we're not gonna say that our number's gonna be less, because if it is more, then we won't get paid. So that's a kooky one right there.
I think that's true for LEAs too, isn't that, their projections, they get paid on that, right? I'm just wondering if, do district schools, are they looking at the percent that go over their projections?
I think district schools get paid for all the kids who show up. I don't think they're limited by what goes in, what they project ahead of time.
Okay.
The complaint is always that we're over projecting and then they don't get the money until October.
Okay. But they do have to put projections in.
But I think they're getting paid for no matter what. Whoever shows up, they get paid. We don't get paid above whatever we put in CSADM.
Right. So there's a different standard, total different standard there. I don't know if the state board realizes there's a total.
But their initial payment, is it based on their projection
It's based on who shows up.
Actual number.
in July?
Yeah, at first, best, and they get best of the first two. We get first 20 days, and based on our CSADM, they get whoever shows up best of first two.
And if I remember right, there was a program evaluation division report that came out through the Weighted Student Funding Committee, and they said this was a huge disconnect between charter schools and district schools. The way that whole thing is set up.
We've also talked in the office in terms of, if you have a school with really small numbers, you can, you're talking a couple students that could throw you off of that 10%
Yeah.
projection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this might be an area that we, look at going, you know, ahead with the performance framework, because I'm not sure that it's a great showing of whether a school is actually, you know, compliant or
Yeah,
not.
so that's what I was gonna say. I don't think this is a compliance issue. I mean, especially, we've been in business for 22 years. We understand the business, but we're gonna project high every year just so that we're not cut short in the long run.
Right,
And every year, we're non-compliant in this issue.
right.
Maybe when the report's presented to the state board, there could be mentioned a little more detail on this one.
Okay. Another area for growth was the current active civil and liability insurance. So our office is working with any charter schools that need to, you know, remedy any insurance issues. What we see a lot is in the charter agreement, the state board needs to be mentioned as like I don't know if it's a secondary insurer or how it works, but they have to be mentioned on the insurance, and so a lot of the schools just miss that. So we're working with schools on making sure that they're compliant going forward, and I think this year, like I said, with Epicenter, that's happening, you know, right off the bat, and most of the schools are happy to make whatever changes they need to make to meet the requirements in charter agreement.
So let me get this straight in my brain. We're collecting information right now on the performance framework report that will go to the state board next year.
Next year.
This is what happened previous year.
Yes.
And this is what will go to the state board
Yes.
in the next month.
Soon, yeah. As soon as we can get it.
I'm assuming there's something in the ready to open process training that gets very specific about the insurance requirements, because it's odd that we're dropping the ball on something as simple as this is the insurance coverage you must have.
Absolutely, and I think, I didn't review these, but from, I would venture to guess that a lot of the schools that had issues were maybe schools that had been in
Older.
existence for a decade or more, because now in RTO, they do get a thorough review of the insurance documents. Yeah.
What did you say that they were missing specifically?
I don't have the language right in front of me, but I believe it's, I know the state board has to be listed, I don't know,
So it's the state board.
of education has to be listed as, I don't know if it's like a secondary, I don't remember the language.
Something, but something.
Yeah.
Additional
Joseph-
insured.
Yeah.
So,
Joseph reviews them.
yeah, I've joined the performance framework with team this year, and this is going to look a lot better next year from what I've seen. One issue that was in Stephanie Clark's notes from last year was the specific wording on per occurrence as opposed to per claim. I've seen all per occurrence this year. Also, there has to be specific mention according to the charter agreement for the State Board of Education as an additional insured. There's a little bit of confusion. I've seen some, a lot that didn't have that. I returned a recommendation to get that and got it back. This year it's gonna be a lot better. That was something, and also specific coverage for errors and omissions. That was something that was shown up a lot last year. And there seemed to be some confusion last year, not this year, but last year, that workers' comp and things like that were covered under an umbrella policy, which apparently is not sufficient under an umbrella policy. And there were a couple of schools, I think, that didn't run transportation systems, that were under the impression in past years that they didn't need auto insurance coverage, but they were told by Stephanie Clark last year that they do. Basically, if they have field trips or anything where a student is on a rented vehicle of any sort, they need to have that coverage to protect the school.
Sure, we do. The self.
Another area is Measure A17, and this was a big one this year that we are really working hard to educate the schools and improve the communication. Communication does go out each year to the schools from the charter school health nurse consultant, and it's an annual like charter school health report that schools are required to. It's like a survey basically. So the data is self-reported by the schools in this survey. And that is how the charter school health consultant will then mark the schools either compliant or non-compliant. It includes things like, you know, whether they have the EpiPens that they need, or whether they have certain types of like educational programs regarding health and safety. And last year, a lot of schools, I don't know if it was a communication mishap or just didn't understand it was being used for compliance purposes.
Okay, I've got some questions on that.
Yeah.
Is DHHS, do they understand that charter schools have flexibility, especially in educational programs? I'd love to see their compliance list and check it against statute. Because we have flexibility in statute regarding programs. So I want to see the DHHS compliance list
Okay.
on that.
Right, is it because they didn't do concussion training, or is?
Because we're not using the standard course of study.
Right.
Yeah, I think most,
61% is a huge number.
That is huge. Or, some people think that we should have shack groups. I mean, that's been discussed at state board. We have flexibility on that. And if DHHS is saying that that's compliant, then there's misalignment with charter schools.
Do we know, you're saying, is the primary reason for compliance not having a school nurse consultant? Is that?
No, it's not. There are several. I know they look at something under EpiPens, under the statute regarding EpiPens. There's something about return to learn, like after a concussion.
The diabetes plan is.
The diabetes plan.
is one of them. The health report that's due June 1 is one of them.
Yeah.
The report that goes in about your shots, whether if you have kindergartners, whether or not all your kindergartners got shots, then if you have 7th graders, whether or not all your 7th graders got shots, those reports also count. I will tell you that we just discovered there was a charter school health nurse consultant last year when we were found non-compliant. We didn't even know that they existed.
Yeah,
So
there's
better
something wrong
communication
with that
will help.
number.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's right.
And we need to make sure that that also has a little caveat in the state board report when we send it in.
Okay. Joseph, do
If
you?
I may, I reviewed the DHHS compliance report from last year. There are the 5 items that you guys mentioned. Overwhelmingly, it was the return to learn, which is after a concussion, is a self-reported survey to the charter school health nurse that was the vast majority of them were marked non-compliant on the list for that one item.
What exactly, there can't be that many kids who are getting concussions at school.
Is it that they didn't have a plan?
It's my understanding from Dr. Allen's understanding of it, and also Stephanie Clark's explanation, was that it is an item on the self-reported survey that the schools are supposed to submit, and maybe didn't know that they're supposed to submit because of there's a contracted nurse at DHHS. That maybe they didn't know or have the program.
We can take this offline, but I really,
Yeah.
Joseph, I want to talk more about that.
Yeah, because I'm wondering how many schools had a concussion that would have needed to be
Yeah,
reporting.
who even
Right.
needed to do a
Well,
return
and
to
if they
learn.
didn't report it, 0, because they didn't have any, was then that non-compliant.
Yes, you gotta report 0 if it's a 0.
Yeah, to
Well, that's
figure
what I'm thinking.
61% of the schools were non-compliant, but in every other case, 70% or more were compliant. In all other areas, when 61% are non-compliant in this area, there's a disconnect somewhere.
Yeah,
Correct.
we don't know what we need to know,
Yeah.
apparently.
Okay, so you can get us more information on that.
Yeah.
It's not been made clear.
All right, the operational renewal monitoring criteria, this just pertains to schools that are in renewal and they were 100% compliant. So there's a maximum of 7 criteria for that. Financial compliance, this measure, it's one criteria that comes specifically from FBS regarding State Board Policy Charter 006, and that was 97.7% compliant. And then the last component of performance framework is academic outcomes. This is section D of the framework. It contains 14 criteria. 12 are comparable measures such as met or not met. And this data comes directly from accountability. So 60.6% met at or above the 80% academic outcomes criteria. So they 60.6% either exceeded or met goals.
One thing I'd like to include in the report on this is that we know the longer a school is open, a charter school is open, the higher the percentage of meeting and exceeding growth. When the cap was lifted, we had a lot of new charter schools. And I can get that information to you.
Okay.
But you can directly see, when you look at the data, there was a real sharp decline in meeting and exceeding growth, but that was because there were so many new charter schools. The cap had been keeping the growth.
Right.
When the growth started, of number of charter schools, then meeting academic growth or exceeding went down. And I think we're gradually getting back up, but I think that needs to be, at least in the report, that it sometimes takes a charter school a couple of years to get their act, be running smoothly.
All right, some areas for growth in academic outcomes, and this is just looking directly, comparing the different measures. The one is D6, at the performance composite for college career ready is comparable to the LEA, and 33.5% not met. The female subgroup proficiency was at 33.5% not met. The black subgroup grade level proficiency was at 33.7% not met. And the white subgroup grade level proficiency was at 36.7% not met. For overall compliance, this is measured against a maximum of 41 criteria. 118 out of the 172 charter schools, or 68.6%, achieved at or above 80%, so exceeded or met goals. And this is just looking at the overall compliance. This kind of shows you this is showing you meeting, exceeding, and not meeting for the different categories. So you can see that the majority of not meeting is occurring in either in academics, and then operational is second. And again, I think operational will definitely improve this coming year with more communication and better knowledge on the part of the schools. And then lastly, this is just showing some school performance trends over the year for the percentage of C or better charter schools and the percentage of D and F charter schools.
Actually, going back to the academic outcomes areas for growth and the different subgroups, in the annual report, we looked at the subgroups, but we were looking at a comparison with the district schools. Are these the targets just that the state board have given us that we're not meeting, or? Because we were higher than the average.
This is, where's my?
Because I remember in our annual report, we had those graphs of the performance looked great in the subgroups, especially in the Hispanic and the blacks.
Well, this is just the ones, well, I don't have the Hispanic off the, they were not on the,
Yeah, you're right.
So is this, I'm just wondering if this is a target that's in the performance framework.
Or is it the ESSA target? Every subgroup in ESSA has a target?
It could be that. It could be the ESSA.
And of course, the state traditional schools are well below those targets. So there's no equivalent criteria saying that traditional schools are non-compliant to these
Right,
targets.
they don't
Whereas
do it.
we're
Nobody,
saying,
yeah, nobody keeps track of
saying
that.
charters are non-compliant, then that's concerning.
I hate that word non-compliant.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a
I
awful
thought we had
term.
decided not to use that word
I
last
thought we
year.
were using
Yeah.
something different, or we discussed it. I
Meeting
know.
target. Percent not meeting target versus non-compliant.
Right, because to me, non-compliant means that you're intentionally
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
Doing what you're
doing
supposed
what
to do.
you are required or supposed to do.
And that you understand what you're required to do and you're
Right.
not doing it.
Non-compliant is my niece when I tell her to do something.
She doesn't do it.
She looks at me like,
I think there's
I
the old
would
saying,
think our legal team would agree with that non-compliant is a much more severe term than it's meant to be used in this scenario. Is that correct, Eric?
Let me put on my robe. I mean, yes, and we've talked about this term compliance as opposed to measuring against a set goal. Like others at this table, I would want to look and see if it's ESSA that's requiring this or the specific source that may use that word compliance in a way that we like or don't like. But I do think it's a worthy rabbit to chase, and if it's measuring progress toward a goal, query whether compliance is the best word choice.
Very much agreed.
what would be the best word choice?
Met,
Oh.
not met.
Not met? Well,
That's what's used for the academic area, is met, not
Yeah,
met.
and that's what the reports that we get from accountability are met, not met.
Met target did not meet
Met target,
target
right.
versus compliant, not compliant. Big difference.
Big difference.
yeah, I really would like to know what target that is we're trying to meet. And I bet you're right, Cheryl. I bet that is ESSA.
I'll look into that.
Because our performance was higher.
Yeah. Not only does the state have targets for every subgroup, individual schools have. So first they came out with the state targets, then they sent us I think we were being evaluated when we got them the first time, but then we got individual school targets by subgroup.
Wow. I remember that.
Any further questions?
A lot of good discussion there, very helpful.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are we done with it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Looks like we're on time.
That's a lot of information.
Doing well with our
10
time.
You want to take a 5-minute break?
5 minutes.
5-minute break.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, no, happily. I mean, that's exactly right.
Research.
Cheryl.
Yeah.
Something after you.
But there was a fly. He just came from nowhere.
Shot and killed and 8th graded.
I saw that. I know.
Terry, are things drying up down your way yet?
Yes, actually, like, the ground's almost dry. It's like in places it was hard the other day. I was like, wow. But like a week ago, I almost got the truck stuck in the yard.
Oh, goodness.
I backed up and it,
Go back and
I
forth.
got off the asphalt from where we got it paved. And I was like, yeah. So I dug a big trench. And my husband's gonna say, what were you doing?
School Bike Association.
It was dark, I couldn't see.
Interesting.
No, we've had not much
We
rain.
ready? We can go.
At least we didn't have flooding. Up our
Yeah,
way.
be thankful for that.
But, we
But
fi-
you're out of your drought now, right?
Yeah,
I think we're ready.
yeah, we're getting lots of grass. The grass is going down.
My weeds are out of control.
Okay, I'm ready to go. Let's get going. Hey.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So we're getting settled in here, but while they're doing that, I'll go ahead and introduce everyone. And we just want to say what an honor and a pleasure it is to be here this morning. My name is Dr. John Eldridge. I'm the head of school at Chatham Charter School. I brought with us our partner with Central Carolina Community College Vice President Brian Merritt, my high school counselor, college liaison, Ren Nix, and our high school administrator, Beth McCullough. Dave Machado came to visit the school a little while back, and we got to sit down and talk a little bit about the Career and College Promise and how we were utilizing it at our school. And so he felt it would be a good opportunity for us to kind of come and talk about how we've used that to kind of fulfill the mission that we have at our school. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Career and College Promise, but we have a link to that somewhere in the presentation, so you can check that out later if you're not. But we've been using it now this will be our 4th graduating class, correct? And so we have kids graduating with approximately an average of 35 credits, but we've had as many. Last year we had a little girl that had 51 credits. We have one on track this year to earn as many as 49. So that's something that we're really proud of. So just if you want, we have a little PowerPoint presentation to go along, but some of the things that we want to kind of talk to you about today is our initial vision for what we wanted to do with the program. I won't get into it too much, but I spent 8 years as a regional superintendent in Guilford County Schools, and if you're not familiar with Guilford County, they do a lot with middle and early colleges. And in fact, I think when I left, there were 27 or 28 in place at the time. And that was something I felt like when I was there, it was just an incredible opportunity for students to kind of get in depth with curriculum, but also help their families out with the tuition for college, because that, as a person that has a sophomore at Davidson right now, can be substantial, as we all are finding out. But I want to also talk a little bit about how important it is to have a great partnership with a college or a community college, and that's why you see Dr. Merritt here with us today. We couldn't do what we do without them. want to get a little bit into some of the components that make our program what I feel like makes it special. And I think why Dave wanted us to come talk to you today, because I think it's something that can be certainly replicated. With the benefits, obviously, are going to be some of the things we talk about that are also not only just for our school, but what we feel like are benefits to the students and so on. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. So I was telling you that we had an initial, we're one of the first, actually in the first group of charter schools that were approved, the first 100 schools that were approved. We actually just did a celebration for that last year. We're really proud of that. And we were always a K-8 school, and our board had a vision to create a 9 through 12 so that we could fulfill our mission of getting kids ready for the 21st century, career or college bound. But basically our goal is to present a college ready curriculum. And so that's really why we got into this whole idea about using the Career and College Promise, because obviously being in college classes is going to help strongly fulfill that mission. Again, I told you I was in Greensboro. One of the things I noticed is that with a rural situation versus an urban, there are like 6 or 7 college campuses, maybe more than that, in Guilford County for students to take advantage of and partner up with. And so you have students who are graduating already, have taken almost a freshman or junior, sophomore year of college, and our students are taking a few AP courses in Chatham County. Chatham County doesn't have an early or a middle school. Now, they actually just started one a year ago, I think, but prior to when we first came, there wasn't one in place. And that was what we felt like was going to be our niche as a charter school, was to start that program up. We felt it fit right in with what our mission is in trying to get kids ready for the 21st century, getting them ready for a career in a college, a high career in college. And I think one of the most key components for that was you can't have a block schedule. You can't have a regular high school traditional schedule and make something like this. Well, you can, I guess, but you're not going to maximize and get to where we have students who are getting 51 credits before they graduate. So Beth's going to get into it a little bit later, but I handed this to her and said, we need to maximize the curriculum. And when she came back the first day that she showed me the schedule, I almost fell out. But we've actually got a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, and a Friday schedule for juniors, and then one for our master schedule is interesting for those that first come and sit down and take a look at it. It gets a little bit dizzy, but it's all right. It's really good for the students. One of the things I think is most key that you'll see on this slide that I don't know that we pay enough attention to is the unwritten curriculum. And when I get into that, it's really talking about study skills, stress management, how to speak to adults when you're by yourself, because, you know, once they start taking college classes, we're not allowed to talk to FERPA, we're not allowed to talk to them, so they have to learn how to advocate for themselves. And all this is being done while they're juniors and seniors in high school, their families around them, as opposed to sending them off to college and be like me, and I didn't figure that out till I was a junior. And there's no telling how much time wasted that I wasted in trying to figure all that out. So we're kind of doing that in-house in our environment, and it's a little bit more safe. And I think another key component is we're finding out we've actually had students this year that graduated from our high school, the first graduating class. We had students graduate from college in December in 2.5 years. Two of them are in graduate school right now. One of them has gone on to a career. And so you've got that as an option, so you're saving a little bit of time. Some folks are going to get their master's degrees done before some students that they started school with get their bachelor degrees. I have students who are at NC State right now that they're in the engineering school. Then instead of taking the 18 credits that some freshmen are having to take and figure out, they're taking 12 because they've already got a lot of the gen ed done. So there's a lot of flexible opportunities out there, and we're discovering more and more each year as we send kids off and they report back and say, hey, I did this. Even so much so, I'm not quoting any numbers, but we actually have some students who are graduating, going into the military, and because they have credits, they're actually going up in rank, which is, a pace. So those are things we didn't even think about when we started this. So this is where I'm going to ask Dr. Merritt to kind of come up and speak from his side of things and how the Career and College Promise works from his end, but also to give you a little information about Central Carolina Community College.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for this invitation. Just briefly about Central Carolina Community College, for those of you who aren't familiar, we are just south of Raleigh-Durham. We cover Harnett, Chatham, and Lee counties, so we're dedicated to college access, making sure that we've got the right programs in the correct places that help lead to college transfer, but also contribute to our local workforce. being number 11 or 12 in population, student population in the state, we are, third largest as far as Career and College Promise goes. Our dedication to dual enrollment, we have actually have college advisors in all of our public high schools, and we have a college advisor that works directly with Wren and with Dr. Eldridge and Ms. McCullough with our partnership with Chatham Charter, because we are, we see that as we've expanded our access to dual enrollment, out of our about 6,300 students that we have each year, about a third of those students are dual enrollment students who are juniors and seniors in high school, earning college credits. So our focus with dual enrollment is career and technical education pathways. We have over 110 degree, diploma, and certificate programs for any traditional student. But we have about 52 pathways, 52 of those that we've created for high schoolers to be able to earn college credits as juniors and seniors to go into these pathways, whether it's at Central Carolina or whether they choose to go to a senior institution. So our partnership, we value innovation. We value making sure that we're able to, spread this access in college in different ways, but it takes innovation, and our partners at Chatham Charter, I've told them plenty of times, they are definitely our most innovative partners, because there's a lot of back and forth about scheduling and about, just a number of things that you'll hear throughout the presentation that we have to go through to make sure that we're able to provide this partnership and help students earn as many as 51 credits before they graduate. One of the things that you'll hear a little bit more about some of the students that can take advantage of at Chatham Charter, that our local county commissioners have created as of this year, our Chatham Promise program. All three of our counties, our county commissioners have created a Promise program. So any student that graduates from Chatham Charter as of this fall will be able to actually, if they haven't finished their associates, they can come to Central Carolina Community College for free up to 2 years with free tuition. This is local dollars. It's provided by our county. It's a last dollar scholarship. So if they're eligible for the Pell Grant, they receive that first. If not, our College Foundation or any other state grants, local grants, we have other scholarship programs. We make sure that any students that have at least 12 credits of CCP credit before they graduate from high school are able to take advantage of our Promise program. So that means that any student that finishes at Chatham Charter, they'll definitely have 12 credits or more. So they'll be able to come to Central Carolina for free and earn that college degree for free before they go on to a senior institution. So again, we're thrilled about this partnership. It's been ongoing for the last 4 or 5 years, and we're starting to see the benefits. And actually, we've seen them for years, but now it's just it's pretty amazing what's happening here. So, but again, thank you, and I look forward to answering any questions you have throughout the presentation.
Just a quick question on
yes.
that, just for clarification. You said a high school student has to have 12 credits to qualify?
Yes,
And
12
if-
college credits, yes.
12
College credits.
So
Yes.
students that maybe didn't dual enroll or take any community college courses, they're out of the program. They have
Yeah,
to
so
pay the full tuition.
We're seeing, if students from, are you just any student, are you from charter or from any other public school? Yeah.
High school student.
Yeah, so we started advertising this a few years ago that it was likely to happen. As we've expanded our advisors in our high schools, we've seen a huge uptick. We have 2,300 students enrolled in dual enrollment programs, with us. So, but they, in order to be qualified for the Promise program, they have to have 12 college credits. Some students opt to, if they can't fit that into their schedule in traditional, high school, they might opt to take some during the summer, to earn credits. So we have the advisors that are working very closely in our high schools to make sure that the students are interested, are going to be eligible by the time they graduate. So yeah.
The 20-some hundred students that are dually enrolled, are those face-to-face classes? Are they primarily online?
We have a combination. So it depends on the high school. It depends on the county. I think there are a number that are online. There's some that might take some online. Some might come to campus. We do have a number of schools. Can't remember the exact number. We send faculty to some of our high schools as well. Again, it's a give and take. We only have so many faculty. They only have some. So we work to make sure that we're providing what's best for each high school. But yeah, it's a combination.
What about textbooks for those students?
Before you, and that's on this slide here, but before we go away from that question you just asked, we sat down in the beginning and had a conversation about when we have as many as 15 students in a class, then we get a seated section. Except for in the areas where we feel like the students are going to have to learn how to navigate online learning, because it's a part of every college institution now that you go. I mean, my daughter has a class where they might sit down once a week, and then the rest of the class is either on Blackboard or some other form online. So we'll take like English 111, for example, will be a seated course, and then when they take 112, it's usually with the same instructor, but they use that one as online. And then some of them are blended, where they'll see the professor once a week, and then they'll do the rest of the work online. And then sometimes, as the students request, if they're struggling with anything, the teacher will oftentimes, instead of having office hours, actually come to our school and sit down with them off schedule. So it's, as he said, it's kind of like a give and take with regard to whether it's going to be seated or online. And I've been thoroughly satisfied with the balance of that.
So how many of your students are actually in this program? How many do you have in your high school?
So we have 200 students. It's set up just like what you would see in some of the middle and early colleges to maintain the status of the program. We keep it small. And so when our kids hit the junior year, everyone is expected to take college courses, whether it's going to be a CTE course or a college transfer course. Now we work, again, that's something further into the slide, but we work give and take given the individual students' abilities and needs. But for the most part, we expect, I think we've been averaging about 80% of our students completing a pathway for the last couple of years, and that's a minimum of 32 credits. So the majority of our students are not only just taking college classes, but finishing the pathway. And Ren will talk a little bit more about what that looks like. We actually have some schedules for you to see. As far as books and things of that nature, we pay for all books and student fees, with the exception of a student that might take a course for repeat in the summer and it's off what we do and they have to purchase another book. Oftentimes the family will just choose to purchase the book on their own, but we cover all fees. And then the third bullet from the top there, this is a state-funded program. So that's what makes it so nice. It's free tuition for the student.
Which of the criteria which of the criteria do most of your students enter under? Are they using pre-ATC? What are they using for criteria to get in?
Well, now, just recently this year, the college went away from using the pre-ACT scores. Now it's based almost completely on your unweighted GPA. So if they have a 2.8 unweighted GPA.
They just changed it, Cheryl.
Mm-hmm.
So they even dropped it to 2.8.
Unweighted.
Unweighted, yeah. It used to be 3.0 weighted, so now it's 2.8 unweighted.
And when we first started, that was going to be our target audience, was career college transfer only. And in a minute, we'll talk about how we've actually morphed that now. The career and technical education side, not all those courses have that 2.8 recommendation. It's actually can be a principal or head of school recommendation. So there's something out there for everyone that's at the school. Yes, sir.
Another important aspect I know happens in Rutherford County to some degree. Do you have teachers on staff that have a master's in the area to teach and are approved to teach the course at the school?
We actually stay away from that, and our staff teaches the high school side of things. CCCC staff teaches all the college side of things. We've been fortunate not to have to even cross over like that.
It helps with cost of staffing quite a bit, I would guess.
Yes, very much so. That's a program benefit for both of us, because they get the FTE from our students, and then that's staffing that we don't have to worry about.
One last question,
Yes, sir.
I'll shut up. How has this impacted your advanced placement program? Is it really pushing AP out the door?
We never even,
Never did it?
I lost, and this is just a personal thing, this has nothing to do with it. I lost interest in AP a while ago because I was able to go into classrooms where I felt like never got through the entire curriculum trying to make sure that all student needs are met. So I never really felt like that in the situations where I was, that AP was the solution for getting kids ready for the college environment. So to me, in my opinion, and what we've done at the school is that sitting in college classes takes care of that. They're at CCCC taking college rigor courses, so and that addresses any concerns as to whether or not you're teaching college curriculum or not.
Bless you.
Any other questions before we keep going? Thank you for your questions. Let me see what else I have up here that we had. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Is that you, Brand? Okay, that's you, Beth.
And along the lines of that question with AP or any other types of courses that students sometimes take, I think one thing we found being small, because we have a max of 50 students, other than staffing, you can go a little above, but really for round numbers, 50 students per grade level, which puts us around 200 for the high school. With that, I think in the scheduling, you know, as the smaller the school, the more challenging the master schedule gets. And so for us to put AP courses in, we only put 2 in at one point just as a bridge for a group of students. And it was a challenge for our teachers because they did it year-long, they did it before school and all, but it was not something, like Dr. E said, that was a good focus for our school. The Career and College Promise really maximizes, if you use it to its fullest, what our intentions are for this school. So it's like a choice, and I know the colleges will look at that. What was the highest level of something you were able to take? So we've been very fortunate to get some students in some Ivy League schools and some places that, you know, we know that it could have been challenging to get them in, so we feel very strongly about committing to this particular program. I'll talk a little bit about our master scheduling. I think this is one of the key components that we've found you have to really have a head for, and you have to have staff who get that. You will find that our 9th and 10th graders, if you're familiar with a traditional 90-minute block semester schedule in high schools, you'll find that our 9th and 10th graders take exclusive classes on that schedule. Many of their schedules, you'll see them coming up in just a minute, and what Ren's going to talk about look very familiar. But then they hit the 11th and 12th grade, and our high school students will continue to take some high school courses. They'll have chemistry in the fall of their junior year with us. The majority of them will have English 4 the second semester of their senior year with us, and they'll also take a lot of elective courses with us, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. But within that, we run the schedule for 9th and 10th graders with their core classes and electives. We run a hybrid type schedule with 11th and 12th graders who will take some of those high school classes and who will also take college classes. There's a different schedule for the juniors than the seniors because of the schedules they take. And most of the classes, as Dr. E, I think, mentioned a while ago, are what you would think of college class schedules being like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday. You may have, for instance, our psychology class is a hybrid course. They go to class 1 day a week, and the other day, the second section will be in class while the first section is working with us. The way our Power School schedules, it actually tells you that you're in class Tuesday, Thursday during that same time slot, whether you're actually physically in the class or whether you're working on it. If it's an online class, you're scheduled through our Power School in that class for that block of time, even though you have some flexibility and maybe working on a project that's due or an exam coming up for another class. Some of the CTE classes in the upper level sciences and maths are multiple days a week in order. A lot of them will be 4 or 5 days a week. Our automotive technology and welding students actually work on a schedule with Chatham County schools. So they take classes in the mornings starting about 8 o'clock, even though our high school day starts at 8:30. And they'll work with the students there. They actually operate on the Chatham County schools schedule with CCCC with that. So that's another scheduling component. We may be on spring break, but those students still go to class on those days. So there's some unique situations there like that. A few number of our students are involved in it, but each year we do have several. And some of those upper level maths and sciences will meet at least 4 days a week. Then if you already didn't have the schedule be complicated enough, we are again a small school, and so we have 3 elective teachers, our marketing, our French, and our visual arts teachers, who in the afternoons teach middle school. It was great when we opened our high school because it allowed us to be able to expand our electives in the particularly 7th and 8th grades. There are not many students around our area who get French as an elective in 7th and 8th grade and then can take French or Spanish with full-time teachers that we employ at our school in French or Spanish. So that gives us an extra complication in our schedule that they can only teach first and second period high school classes. So we try to make it as complicated as we can to see if we can challenge ourselves to really maximize what we can do too. But the key to it, I found, is having people around you who understand how to do those kinds of schedules. Ren and 2 of our other teachers who come in to help us can do the schedule about as good as I can now, which is great. And I have a whiteboard on the back of my office door each year that stays there all year, and everybody knows that when you find something that is not working or you'd like to try differently the next year, your job is to come tell me so that we can put it on there early on in the school year. And as I begin to build the master schedule for the upcoming year, usually in March, the first thing I do is go to the back of my door and see what I can work in. And there's several theories behind that. One, if you're the person on the ground doing the work every day and you realize it doesn't work, I'm not the expert to see what you see every day. And so that also gives the staff some ownership, and they understand if something doesn't work, why it doesn't, and they buy into it better. And it also gives some staff morale, because if I can make things easier for teachers, why wouldn't I? If it's not what's best for students, everybody understands without question that we won't be able to do it. But if it makes your schedule easier as a teacher, then why wouldn't we do it that way? And one of the examples I gave was, this was just me not thinking. I'm a high school person. I've worked in high schools for years. But one year we did chemistry and earth science with our teacher. This was before we put all the chemistry in the fall. And the way Power School threw it out and the way the schedule just seemed to work best, it was a section of chemistry, then a section of earth science, and then a section of chemistry. And our teacher is really lab oriented and does a lot of labs. And he came back at the end of that year and I said, is there anything that you see that would work better? And he said, well, if I had the two chemistries back to back, it sure would help. I was like, why didn't I think of that? And so sometimes it's little things like that. So I started the schedule that year with that in mind, and it worked. And so those are the kinds of things that we try to do to make sure we maximize. We also have some great electives that our students in high school have chosen to take, and that was my biggest fear in opening the high school, was I was afraid that our juniors and seniors would just be gone. They would be off campus doing just college classes, and we have a few toward the end who are. But most of our students, because we've added some of those electives back, have chosen to come and stay with us. And as small as we are, 50 students roughly per graduating class, we have students taking French 4. We have Spanish 4 every single year. We have students who are in art specialization, which means they're taking a 5th semester of visual arts. And so you have those students who really buy into the high school programs that are there. And so those have been some of the nice advantages. I put a couple of other things on the bottom of this slide that we use the time before first period and lunch for a lot of club meetings and a lot of tutoring and academic enrichment. Really feel strongly that if you're going to run a program that has a lot of high academic rigor, then you've got to honor that academic time. And I didn't like my time to be interrupted as a teacher, so I certainly try not to as an administrator. And I hope our folks seem to value that a lot. And the other one I think is running off this presentation just a little bit, but we start the school year in mid-August and we end our semester before we go home for Christmas. That's one of the nice advantages of not having to abide by the school calendar law. And because of that, we're able to work on a college schedule. And so it works nicely with those semesters lining up with each other. And so I think that's another crucial piece of that. But I think those have been some nice pieces that we've been able to involve in the master scheduling composition. And one thing we thought was important was to be able to share with you some of the typical schedules and what they look like. So Ren will talk about
So
those.
do you guys get out in early May?
We graduate on May 18th. Our last student day is May 15th, which is why we don't have students with you today. I think if we had asked them to do one other thing today, they would have melted down because they're all in exams right now.
What, your KA gets out that same day?
Yes, we run this. That's where we did decide to run one schedule. I think it'd be
Yeah,
nearly
that's what
impossible.
we did too. We all start early so we can, but now my kids don't. Their college classes have ended, but they will continue with their electives until,
Yeah, and ours do the same, which is really nice because our school year starts a few days before the college starts and it ends a few days afterwards, which gives us some prep time, particularly with those juniors, the first time they take classes. It gives our staff some time to orient them into what the expectations will be, to go over handbooks, to even do some college tours occasionally between semesters and things like that. So it seems to work nicely. Other questions about this piece? Well, Ren's going to show you a typical schedule of our students and kind of how we align that, and there'll be some things we talk about at the end about how we've worked to improve that and tweak it over the years.
Okay, so as Beth said, here is a typical schedule of our students, broken down year by year. And I find this is really helpful to give to new families. We always use this at our interest meetings that we hold in January, which is for students and families that have been in our school and are in 8th grade and thinking about coming to the high school, but also any new students that may get a spot through our lottery. This just kind of gives them an overview of what the expectations are, how the schedule is going to be structured, but also what the students are going to get out of this program if they fully maximize it. And then students and parents can kind of look at that and say, is this a good fit for my student? Is this what I'm hoping for in my high school experience? You can see in the freshman and sophomore years, students are just taking the college classes, but we do pack in their graduation requirements in those 2 years. And I know that's not always the case, not always what other traditional schools might do, especially with the math. And we've seen that with students coming from outside schools who maybe transfer in their sophomore, junior year. A lot of times they take one math a year. Well, here they go ahead and take 2 maths. Of course, we're on the block system, so they're going to take 4 of these in the fall and 4 in the spring. But that allows them to go ahead and get a good chunk of their graduation requirements out of the way. So when they get to the junior and senior year, they can take full advantage of the Career and College Promise program and get all those college transfer credits and take those college courses. It also kind of helps them to become acclimated to the heightened expectations that they're going to receive when they get into the junior and senior year and start taking college classes. They have some electives, but their schedule's not padded with a bunch of electives. They're more focusing on their core courses. And all the core courses, too, I'll say, are taught at the honors level. With the exception of Math 1, since that's a state rule on that, and then their foreign languages. But any electives in the upper third and fourth levels are going to be honors as well. So that's just another thing I think that helps prepare them for the added rigor and challenge that they'll see when they get to the junior and senior year. We also kind of set them up, too, in the sophomore year with 2 foreign languages because we know that's going to be a requirement at any of the UNC system schools and most of the private schools in the state too. So again, that's just helping prepare them for college, and that's part of our whole program. You'll see in the junior and senior year, the courses that they're taking, they're actually very purposeful in why we selected those courses. I know some of you seem to be somewhat familiar with the CCP program. Students have pathways that they're required to complete. So the pathway is a set of courses in certain disciplines. And so we tried to select courses that we knew also would meet those requirements, but also would be courses that the majority of students can be successful in, but that they also would be courses that are needed when they go to college. So you see, that's why we selected psychology in the spring. And that's why they take art appreciation or a second level math class. It gives them a variety of courses that it's going to check off those requirements when they get to college and they're meeting those general education requirements.
Why not do the English 242 and complete the English 3 and 4 completely at the college level?
Yes, and that's actually something we had to add to that. So the English 111, 112, and 232 are going to meet the high school English 3 credit. And so we include that. We typically, most students take high school English 4. We have a high school teacher that teaches that. But they also do have the option to take English 242 in place of their English 4 credit. So we do have some that'll do that, but a lot of them are just, they really enjoy having that teacher. He was their English 1 teacher. He makes it really fun. So a lot of them have chosen to take that with him, but some students, for scheduling reasons or just because they want to get some extra college credit, do take the English 242 in place of English 4. Is that kind of what you were asking?
It's kind of funny, when we first started, this 232 was not an option for dual credit. And so we kind of pushed for it. We're like, well, why would we why do kids go to college all, for 2 years and then they got to come back for their senior English? And then all our kids jumped in and wanted to take senior English, but we do have 2 or 3 that are taking the English 232.
242.
I'd like to just say something. I'm glad you're teaching a lot of English courses because I was taught proper grammar. And I have listened to people on television. There's one recently in Greensboro. I live in Gulf County. And he was saying the other day, now this is an educated person, is on the TV as a reporter. Me and so are going to do this. I'm telling you, it really bothers me that is the best they're learning. And they're letting them get by with it on television.
I like that the community colleges, English 111 and 112 are grammar writing based. And that's why they ask that you take the third one, which is English 232, is for rounding off that English 11. You have solid writing, solid grammar, and then literature based.
So anyway, that's my thing. That's what bothers me.
Yeah, so they get plenty of English.
One of the things that bothers me.
Yeah, they get plenty of English as they learn how to write. And that's what we tell them. Sometimes they might say, well, I have to have 3 college Englishes to equal high school English 3. Why not just take the English 3? Well, you're coming away with pretty much all the Englishes you're going to need for college unless you're going to be an English major, too. And also they're ready to, write those long papers, and they're prepared for that. You'll see up here the History 131 and 132 is highlighted as well. That's another class that we use to meet graduation requirements. So we use that to help students meet the American History 1 and 2 requirement as well. So we use those courses. Not only do they get, most of them get elective credit, but some of them actually help check off graduation requirements, which is nice as well. I know some of you had asked about, are they seated? Are they online? You'll see, just for an example, in the junior year, the fall, the English 111 and the ACA 122, the instructors actually come to our campus and teach those face-to-face to the students. The Math 171 is a face-to-face class as well. The students just go down the road to the Siler City campus to take it. And in the spring semester, the History 131 and the Math 172 are seated fully, and then Psych 150 is the hybrid class. English 112 is online, but they've had English 111, and a lot of times it's with the same instructor, and so that's kind of a nice compliment. They know what to expect from that instructor, just to kind of give you an idea. And we keep this schedule fairly standardized. That helps us, again, like we mentioned before, to get the seated sections with an instructor, and also just for being able to keep up with groups of students and where they're moving if they have similar courses. But there's also some customization. You can see in the spring semester of the junior year, students can take a second level math class, but if they're not a math person or it's not something that is going to benefit them when they go to college, then they can do a humanities course, Art 111. Also in the fall of their senior year, they have some choice over their science. So if they don't need to take a college level biology or chemistry class, they can do geology. And so that's kind of a way we keep it standardized, but also can customize it based on student interest. All right. Okay. And so this is just a quick example of, we found that if students maybe weren't successful with the schedules we laid it out, that it does make it a little bit more difficult to take full advantage of those college transfer courses. But they're still going to get to take some CTE courses. They may take some history classes online, but it does make it a little more challenging but we're able to work around it. Okay. Right here, this just gives a breakdown of the different college transfer and career and technical education pathways. Again, we mentioned the pathways. Students can either work in the pre-associate in arts, pre-associate in science, or pre-associate in engineering pathway. Again, there's not a whole lot of difference between the two. The science just has an extra math and an extra science and one less humanities class. The majority of our students are completing the arts pathway. Usually we'll have a couple that'll do the science each year if they're more science-minded students and they're heading in that direction. And we did have one last year that completed the associate in engineering pathway as well. We do have students that take courses in the career and technical education pathway. Again, I know Dr. Eldridge mentioned earlier that our main focus is for students to do the college transfer pathway, because that's what's going to get them all the gen ed requirements, or a lot of them that they're going to see in their first 2 years of college. But some students we found are not ready for that, or it's not lined up with what they're wanting to do for their future plans. So the career and technical education pathways have been crucial for some students, and that's one thing that I've seen and really have been pleasantly surprised with. Even I've been here at Chatham Charter for a little over 4 years, and when I started there were some good options, but it seems like every year they're adding more and more. And we had a link to it, but I know it's a little bit tough to get to. But things like criminal justice, human services technology, nurse aid, dental assisting, business, we have students take. We've had some guys that will do automotive and welding. We had a student last year that actually completed the automotive pathway and earned a certificate in automotive systems when he graduated, and he was 1 credit away from completing the associate in arts pathway as well. So some are doubling up, and some are focusing just completely on the college, the career and technical pathways. I know one student success story I always think about is a student named Allison. In her junior year, she just really struggled to find any motivation. We couldn't get her to work. Her parents couldn't get her to work. She was, just barely scraping by D's. Sometimes she might even fail a class. We'd put her in some online CCCC courses, and it was kind of mixed results for her. But she came and said, I really would like to try a seated class. So just out of lack of not knowing what else to do, I said, sure, let's give it a try. And we put her in 2 courses on the CCCC Sanford campus in human services technology. They were more like sociology type classes because she had an interest in counseling, social work, something along those lines. that somehow just flipped a switch in her, and she did a complete 180. She started making A's and B's. I think she made all A's her junior year of her senior year, and then this semester of her senior year, this spring, she's got A's and B's, and she's taken 4 college classes. I think something about just going to that campus and being able to navigate not just the classes, but little things like finding a parking space, figuring out where her classes are, interacting with students she didn't know, just kind of put it in her mind that, hey, I can be a college student, I can do this. So I've just seen the great things, even though our focus is the college transfer, the great things that have come out of the career and technical pathways too. So I'm so glad that CCCC, continues to add and find out what student needs are and adds more pathways for students to take. All right, let's see. And just quickly, of course, we talked about how, one of the big benefits is earning college credits that students gain from, taking these college classes. Our students typically will earn, in 32 to 45 credits. They're going to get at least 32 if they're doing the college transfer pathway, like we said. But a lot of them we're finding are choosing to take additional classes when they finish up the pathway, because that gives them more options on what they can take. So, like Dr. Eldridge mentioned, we have one student who'll earn 49 transferable college credits, and last year we had one that earned 50. I went and added it up over our last 4 graduating classes. Our students have earned a total of 4,979 credits, and that's 145 students. Our first group is actually a small group. We piloted it with a smaller group of students. It was only 18, so it would have been more than that, but that's a huge number. And, they're being successful, and they're learning the skills that are allowing them to be successful when they get to college. I think that's the biggest thing we've seen. And just the fact that they're able to explore additional interests too. When they finish those 32 minimum credits, they might take gen ed type courses, but they might also take something in a certain career and technical area that they're interested in, like education. We've had some that take it in dental assisting and learn more about that, or criminal justice. So the possibilities are numerous, and that's just one of the cool things to see from the program. All right, I'll let Dr. E talk more about the benefits.
We've got a short time left with you, about 6 minutes, so I'm going to just go quickly through these next slides, because I think you're hearing. I think one of the most important things about this is how pumped up we are about it, and it's really gotten the students pumped up about it too. Because I think there's a lot of, when we first started the program, there were people that were, there's no way this is going to work, right? I'm not sure our kids can do college work, and now it's like, as you heard, the students getting into their senior year. Oftentimes when they have a chance to maybe take a few electives, they're like, no, if I take this class now, I'm not going to worry about it when I go to college. And we're not having to tell them that. They figured that out. So it's been really kind of fun to sit back and watch how that happens. I've hit on some of these already, and so some of the others that just spoke, but just some program benefits, if you want to look those over real quick. The most important probably comes in the first category, where they're learning these things while they've got support around them. They've got high school teachers, they've got their parents, they've got other students that they already trust and know. So they're figuring some of these things out before they go to college, and that's one thing that they're not going to have to stress out about when they leave and get dropped off for that first time. They already know what to expect with college coursework. They know how to speak to college teachers. So that's cool. The second group of 3 there, if you'll take a look, our students are typically finishing between 1 and 1.5 years of college. So Ren did a little calculation and found out that 1 year at a UNC school is $24,266. So if that's the case, if we're finishing 1.5 years of school, is that close to $40,000 scholarship and 1.5 less years of college possibly? Again, we talked about there's options out there. I can still go to school 4 years if I want to and just slow down a little bit. But it does save a family, a student and student loans, a considerable amount of money. And what we're finding, because if you look at the language that's in the Career and College Promise, this is only supposed to be for UNC system schools, right? The schools in the UNC system. We've run into very few instances where schools outside the state, Ole Miss, we have a student at Ole Miss that was a junior after her first semester of school. That's one of the ones that graduated early. South Dakota State, is that South Dakota State or somewhere? Black Hills? Black Hills, My daughter went to Davidson. They accepted 3 or 4 her classes, So it's one of those things where it's not just in the UNC system. It's guaranteed in the UNC system, but it's being accepted outside that as well. So that's scholarships that we can't calculate those up, but they're out there. And then the last thing we've talked about, the unwritten curriculum, that's kind of like our coined term at the school. This is stuff you don't write down and say you have to study. It's just things that happen as a result of getting the kids to go. All right, next one. So, and I think one of the other things, back one more. There we go, thank you. When I was in middle college, early colleges in Guilford County, one of the things that sometimes students, not in all cases, but sometimes had to sacrifice extracurricular activities like sports because they weren't at those schools. Now, they had the option to go back and play at their home school, but that didn't always work out. We don't have that issue for the most part, with the exception of football. I won't click on it where it says high school sports offered. It'll click you back so that you can see what we actually offer at the school. But we also have things like DECA. We have actually a house system that's kind of based on the Hogwarts from Harry Potter. We have our students split up to 4 houses where they do competitions throughout the year, like cornhole and some other things like that. We have students. My daughter was one that participated in governor's school. We've actually had someone each year that was participating in governor's school. So those are great benefits. And then there's a few other things that we've had to do along the way for adaptation. I think Beth wanted to talk a little bit about that because we have had to change as we go.
We have. Sometimes we found that we hit the academics too hard in the beginning, and they were still high school students. And I always have to step back and ask myself, are we doing this for them or to them? Yes. And there have been times we've been doing it to them, and one of the things you'll see is that we step back and I think this is the 4th bullet, that we adjusted those college transfer courses in the order that they were in. We were absolutely bombing them in the second semester of their junior year. So there's some things that we've learned as lessons, and we've adapted along the way and listened to our students too. We also learned the hard way that you probably need a licensed teacher instead of TAs working with the upperclassmen. The TAs just didn't provide enough technical support to them, so we have a licensed English teacher, high school experience, and a licensed math teacher who are very supportive in addition to the community college teachers that are there. Some other things we've expanded out, we've increased our electives. We offer forensic science and electronic arts and high school courses to kind of help them. And then down at the bottom, I think 2 things that are very important in the last 2 bullets. We've been open to adding in things that our students need on the high end. Some of our students have been accepted in the School Science and Math Online program, and we've replaced some of their electives if they wanted to with that and allowed some of them to graduate from there, which is just a great thing for them if they're that high-end math, science, tech student. And then finally, I'm sure you're probably wondering this, how do you do this with EC students? Pretty successfully. If you work with the IEP and you really work with customization and you stay close to your students and their families, the EC teacher that we have is very strong in that. But it takes a lot of work and a lot of commitment to do it right for them too. But they are able to reach and heighten their own expectations and their own abilities with us if we do it right. And a lot of that's setting them up for success instead of failure in customization. Some of the things that we found out you must do, and Dr. E's going to kind of hit this one. I think these are some crucial things that we found that if anybody's considering doing this, you really got to be willing to do some of these things.
So be creative and out of the box thinkers. As you've heard, we've kind of thrown that around a little bit today, but you really have to come to the campus and see what we talk about with this. Because we actually have, that was perfect timing, by the way.
That was really
It
scary.
actually worked out perfect in the presentation. Because that's how we felt the first time we made the schedule. We heard that sound from the Twilight Zone.
I swear it's on silent.
That's okay. That's why I said it was meant to be.
So it was.
So you're saying we're hearing things?
No, I mean, I had the do not disturb.
It's a collective hearing things. But we have kids all over the place. When we were describing this, like when we say the Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday schedule, when there's kids at CCCC, we have them in a room working with these 2 licensed teachers that they talked about. And then when it's time to switch, they get up, they go, and then the other ones come back. And we have a signing in and signing out feature for that. But that's what when Dave sat down, looked at this thing and saw how many different places our kids were going and when they were going, that's when he was like, how does this work? I'm like, you just have to come and see it, right? So if you're ever in our area, we'd love for you to come by and see that out of the box portion of this up close and in person. You got to stand firm on the fact that students can rise to your expectation. That's the biggest part. I think most of us believe that, but you have to stand firm on believing, and then they'll push a little bit, but they will rise to what you expect them to do. And I think that's the most important part about sending them off. They've got to know how to rise to their own expectations, not just yours. You got to know when to be flexible with kids, as you heard her talk about, but there's some inflexibility too. When kids want to drop these courses because it's too much, I tried to do that with mine in calculus, and they said no. You know, so if you get in, you got to drive it home, right? So, but there's also portions where we have to evolve, like how we changed our schedule up when we were crushing them in that junior year. We had to evolve a little bit. You got to have innovative and visionary people, because it can't be about what the administration wants to do. It's about what the kids, it's about what the teachers feel like can be done to maximize a program like this. Had we not listened to our teachers and listened to the people at CCCC and taken their feedback, I guarantee we wouldn't have evolved in the way that we have so far. So it's important to have those people around you. You can't, and this is just an opinion that we have for our program, there's got to be people in there that have more than just building level experience, because they've got to see how these things connect at the outside. You got to see how important those outside relationships are. You got to have a balance between rigor and student support, right? So when you can see that the kids are getting ready to melt down, there's got to be something in there to help them walk through what's causing you to melt down, because normally it's one of those unwritten things. You're not managing your time well. You're not keeping a calendar well. You're not doing some of those things that are going to get you either in the workforce or in college when you don't have somebody catching you on it. And then the last thing, as you've heard from us hopefully this morning, you've got to be passionate and you've got to be committed that this will work. And that's pretty much, I feel like, what's gotten us to the point we are, and hopefully has inspired some other folks around us to look and say, hey, we could do that too. So that's pretty much it, I believe, for our presentation. Are there any questions that you have not asked that you'd like to ask now?
I have one comment and one question. The comment is, I think either it's happened or it's probably going to happen with an articulation agreement that's similar between the community college system and the UNC system, of having a similar one between the community college system and the independent private colleges and universities. So I think that's going to be just another tool that you have to say, if some of the kids would say, well, I want to go to Duke, but I'm not going to be able to pull that over, but now they should be able to, as that's going. And then my question is, are the names of the houses the same as the Harry Potter books?
No, it's funny you asked. They're actually named after former headmasters. And a founding person, two former headmasters, one of the founding persons at the school, Julie Brent Milholland, and then a custodian that we had that passed away from cancer, that we chose to make him one of the houses.
So which one's like Slytherin?
That would probably be House Nobles. Yeah, that's after the custodian. They always see themselves as the dark horse.
So the main campus for CCCC is in Sanford, right? So where do your kids go?
All three campuses.
So
we have kids in
all
Pittsburgh.
around.
The calculus and science courses are generally in Sanford.
We have them all over, so for this partnership.
That's the thing, we've got
So
them all.
do you transport kids to any of those?
If they require transportation to Siler City, we provide it. The other two courses, the other two campuses,
far.
it's on them to drive out.
And the majority they can take all their classes on the Siler City campus, but if there's a
They
certain
could,
science
okay.
or they wanna take calculus, something like that, they're gonna have to go to Pittsburgh or Sanford, and we say, okay.
I was just wondering about like the students who don't drive.
Yes, and usually that probably wouldn't be one, they wouldn't take that, or they would ride with someone. Maybe we try to schedule if there's a friend that's taking them that they can ride with.
And you get that in agreement that the parent says it's okay, you're riding this so-and-so.
That's one of the places where Dave's mind got blown, because it's not just a partnership between the university and the school, it's also the parents and families partnering with us as well too, because I think once they saw the value in what they could accomplish
They
with
know
it,
how
they
much
were
it's
willing
saving
to
them.
jump in and really take ownership and be a part of it.
I just want to make a comment with regards to the AP. So we are about to graduate our third class, and with our first graduating class, we started our CCP program with that junior class when those kids were juniors, and that was the one thing. We didn't have anybody who was certified to teach AP. We're very small. We're about 150 in our high school. And we looked at the various options. So students could take AP courses if they wanted to through the virtual public school. But we just feel like the benefits are greater and the college credit's guaranteed.
Guaranteed. That's the part I think that when I want to be fair to other systems or anybody that's using AP, if it works for you, that's great. But for us, I noticed that the standards for colleges accepting those credits became a little bit more rigid. So like if you don't get a 5, we're not going to award you full credit, or it's going to be an elective credit. So knowing that they sat in and at least they get a C or higher in the course, it's a transferable credit.
Right. So I agree with that. Good job.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
This is just so interesting, and I'm really excited about it. Have some concerns, though.
Yeah.
Just want to know your thoughts. It looks like K-12 education is moving toward the European model, which is really, you get a liberal arts, your education is K-8, and then starting in 9th grade, you decide which pathway you're going to go
Right.
to. And that's pretty well, hopefully ours is have more options than the European model, because European model's pretty, you're going to be a doctor.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I would say to that is that once we got the high school part in motion, our theory from the beginning was once we got that set, it was going to be pushed back into the middle school and the elementary school, so that it's not just all of a sudden you hit 9th grade and you've got to make all these decisions and it gets difficult. So the rigor doesn't just happen when you hit 9th grade. And then knowing that you've got all these options out there, I will tell you that the career and technical education side of this is probably the most growing part of our program. So it's not just going to be, and just because you take these classes doesn't mean I'm locked in to be, like my daughter took calc and she took biology with the hopes that maybe she's going to be an eye doctor. Now she's sitting at Davidson and she's majoring in theater and choral music. So I don't think, and most of the courses that you see our kids taking are in the gen ed part of what they're going to do when they go to college anyway. Do you know what I mean? So it's not locking them into any major. It's not locking them into any decisions that they have to live with in their junior or senior year of school. It's just knocking out courses that they're going to pay for anyway that may not be associated with what they want to do when they get to college. Or, you know, the other thing that we're seeing too is with the creation of the Chatham College, a lot of the kids are selecting to finish their associate's degree before they even think about going to college, you know, so that's a bigger viable option now than it was when we first started this as well.
Well, and I'm sure as people understand more and more about these college loans that kill you, that kill you.
Yes, ma'am.
That's right.
And we're pretty good about the reason why we show that schedule that Ren went over is not to scare anybody, but what we're trying to do is capture the kids that know this is what they want to do, right? I know I want to go to college, or I know that I want to, so that's why I think charter schools, that's our job. It's to fill a niche that's not already available in that area. And so that's why they apply to come to our school. So if they're choosing this, then that's, I guess, their goal at the end is to hopefully earn as many credits as they can to go to a college. And it doesn't lock, like you said, it doesn't lock them in. It just gives a firm foundation.
Well, not only that, with the gen ed, you know, you're dual credit. So you're getting the things that's required to graduate anyways.
You get the liberal arts.
Yes.
Well, you know, the history, the English, you have to have those to graduate from high school.
But we
So
also
you're
have
just getting the
chemistry,
bonus of
biology,
having-
geology, Calc 1, Calc 2, you know, so it's probably more ideal for the kids to do the art side of the pathways because it's easier for us to schedule. But for those kids that want to do the chemistries or they wanted it, then of course we'll create the opportunity for them, and it's going to be one of those things where they have to drive to Sanford to do that, but it is an option.
Sometimes it shows them what they don't. So I've had some that say, you know,
That
I'm
is
an
true.
engineer, but this calculus class is just not for me. And so they did it, you know, while it wasn't on their parents' dime. So that's been another thing that's come out of it too.
That's good.
And not everybody wants a college degree. They want to do some work with their hands, and thank God we need them.
Well, the CTE
Yes.
covers that.
And we've seen an increase in the students that are going, like we've had a number going to the military. You know, we're right directly in.
We need them too.
Yeah, there's the young man that she was talking about that finished his auto and welding. I mean, he's come out into a field that's paying, you know, mid-30s an hour, so that's not bad for an
Make a
18-year-old.
lot of money.
That's right.
It is.
Any other questions that we can answer?
I think we're good at this time.
Great work.
Thank you all for
So much.
the opportunity and letting us to come speak to you about what we're up to. And I do extend the invitation if you'd like to come see it in action, Chatham Charter in Siler City, home of Aunt B.
You do that.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Be there.
Thank you.
All right. So it is 11:30. Got Jay. I think
Okay, we can do grants, huh?
Jay is ready, and we can keep trucking here. See if we can.
That's scary. We won't go there now, though.
Great. Well, we're here to present the first round of sub-grant awards for the NC Access program. As you all know, we're running a competitive annual sub-grant application cycle to award funding to charter schools who propose to increase and serve a greater number of educationally disadvantaged students throughout the state. We had 26 letters of intent submitted in February. Of those, 23 were eligible to apply. So those that were eligible were invited to apply in one of 4 categories: planning and implementation, implementation only, expansion, or replication. By the March 31st deadline, we had 12 applicants apply, 5 planning and implementation schools, 5 implementation only schools, 2 expansion schools, and no replication schools for this year. So following the deadline, we started our review process. Each application was reviewed by a review committee of 4 individuals, including myself, our program coordinator, Dr. Barbara O'Neill, and 2 trained external evaluators. Each evaluator reviewed the entire application using the CSAB and State Board approved scoring rubric, and then all of the scoring, ratings, and evidence provided by evaluators was used to create a recommendation for each applicant. An application that merits a recommendation for approval should present a clear, realistic picture of how the charter school expects to successfully implement the proposed plan to increase and support a greater number of educationally disadvantaged students served in high-quality charter schools around the state. So what we'll do is go through each category of application that people could apply for. We'll stop after each one for questions or discussions and allow us to discuss each school. But before we get into that, I just want to make a couple of quick notes. You have a full recommendation report for every school that applied, which includes our full recommendation as a team, the application materials submitted by the applicant, and all of the review committee rubrics. Approval for all schools in the planning and implementation category is contingent on those schools being approved for operation by the state board at their June meeting. So just wanted to throw that out there before we get into that category. If a school is approved, it's not a guarantee that they will receive all of the sub-grant money that they applied for. A final budget will be submitted to us, and that we will review for allowability based on federal regulations and guidelines under ESSA, as well as the reasonableness of all the costs that are presented. And then additionally, our team will meet with all of the applicants to discuss the plan that they've proposed, everything from school lunch to transportation to marketing and everything that they've included, and we'll go through our entire monitoring process so that they're clear on what the expectations are moving forward, and how sub-grant funding will or will not continue based on the benchmarks that are set and expectations that they'll have to meet throughout the duration of the sub-grant. So the recommendations come in one of 3 forms. A school could be recommended for approval, conditionally recommended for approval, or not recommended for approval. Recommended for approval and not recommended for approval are, I think, pretty straightforward based on the names. Schools that are not recommended for approval are welcomed and encouraged to apply for future sub-grant cycles, provided that they continue to meet all of the eligibility criteria outlined in our state application. We do have some schools that were conditionally recommended for approval, and the reason for that is based on the trends that we saw from applications that were submitted this year and the categories that people were applying to. We decided that we were going to make some revisions to the allotment of subgrants that are going to be awarded over the course of the next 5 years. And I think the major takeaway from that is we wanted to provide more support for the planning and implementation only sub-grant categories based on some of the applications we received and some of the demand and the amount of charter schools that are starting up, particularly for the lack of capital that a school has on the front end. And then seeing some of the decrease in the expansion and replication applicants for this year, and particularly moving forward, obviously the replication requires the additional step of requesting and applying for a charter to replicate a school. So there's an additional piece to that process of going through the full charter approval process in addition to getting a replication subgrant. So this is all part of sort of a larger revision that we've requested from the U.S. Department of Education. So part of that is awarding 2 additional implementation only subgrants for this cycle. We had originally allocated 2, and because of the strength of some of the applications that we received, we have requested a revision to give out 4 this year, and I'm happy to talk at greater length about some of the other revisions we've requested either at this meeting or a future meeting. But those schools that are conditionally recommended for approval, we would, if our revision is approved by the U.S. Department of Education before the June State Board meeting, we will also recommend those 2 schools for approval. If it's not approved by the June State Board meeting, we will not be able to recommend those for approval this year, and they would have to reapply in a future subgrant cycle.
So Jay, what you're saying, in our original application to the U.S. Department of Education, we had a very specific number for each category.
Correct.
How many do we have for the replication?
We had 2.
So basically, we want to morph them into the implementation only.
Yes,
category for
we've
this
done
year.
a large number of, we knew that we were going to go with revisions to the entire pipeline. So in a sense, yes, but it is part of a larger change to the pool.
Forward going.
Yes.
So Jay, just for clarification and for presentation to the State Board for Alex and Steven's benefit, the schools that need to be approved in order to get that implementation initial grant are which ones of these?
So
just to make sure the timeline can be met, that we assure that they're approved in June.
Yeah, right there on that chart, Joe.
So this is the list of recommendations that you have that we'll go through in a second. So everything that is recommended for approval, we are fine now to recommend those to the State Board. We're working as quickly as possible with the U.S. Department of Education to get our revision to our state application approved, that we would be able to award the conditionally recommended approved schools in June as well.
Right.
So we will have a decision by that meeting of whether or not we are able to recommend those or not. Any questions before we jump into the recommendations themselves?
Just one clarifying question, Jay. Can you just give a tiny little description of the 4 categories?
Yes, so I'm going to do that as we go through each
Perfect.
group.
Carry on.
So in order to be recommended for approval, an applicant has to meet all the general standards and score at least 80 points on the technical standards in the state-approved rubric. The technical standards are enrollment projections, the application narrative, the budget narrative, and the logic model. So we'll skip the replication because we didn't have any applicants for that during this subgrant cycle. So for planning and implementation, this is for newly approved schools that will go into their planning year for the 2019-2020 school year. Applicants are eligible for up to $400,000 in subgrant funding. And we received 5 eligible applications for 3 allotted subgrants. So the schools that are recommended for approval, and the list is just in alphabetical order, not by score, but Mena Charter School of Lee County, Movement East Charter School, and Wilmington School of the Arts. We can talk specifically about each one of those applications, and I can answer questions of those as we go through. The 2 schools not recommended for approval are CE Academy and Robert J. Brown Leadership Academy. So for the schools recommended for approval, Mena Charter School is planning to serve an 85% educationally disadvantaged student population. The application had a heavy emphasis on the recruitment of ED students, a strong school culture and discipline plan, and a plan to purchase buses to provide transportation. Additionally, there was a pretty comprehensive professional development plan outlined to support the needs of ED students, and that applicant scored 83 points on the rubric. Movement East Charter School is projecting to serve close to 70% ED student population. They also plan to serve a disproportionately high number of English learners based on their location in the East Charlotte community. They had very strong lunch and transportation plans, as well as a curriculum plan that was specifically tailored to meet the needs of educationally disadvantaged students. And they provided a clear analysis of the funding gap that they are trying to meet with this subgrant as they go into the planning and implementation of the school. And that applicant scored 89 points on the rubric. And then Wilmington School of the Arts plans to serve a 51% educationally disadvantaged student population. Again, they had a very strong school lunch and transportation plan, as well as a clear focus on professional development for staff, and they scored 92 points on the rubric. CE Academy proposed serving 25% educationally disadvantaged student population, which is strong for the geographic location of the school, which would be located in Cary. And they had a clear focus on English learners as well, but ultimately their application needed more detail and evidence to ensure the review committee that the plan would be successful. The school lunch and transportation plans needed further development, and there was some misalignment between what was outlined in the budget versus what was outlined in the application narrative. And that application scored 57 points on the rubric. And then finally, Robert J. Brown Leadership Academy proposed to serve 18% educationally disadvantaged students. It was unclear to the review committee exactly how that number was derived from some of the evidence that was provided based on the demographics of the area. And while there was some detail needed on other parts of the application, one major area for concern was information regarding the partnership with the CMO. A requirement of the federal government is that applicants who are partnering with the CMO outline the roles, responsibilities, duties of both the school and the CMO, and include a contractual agreement between the two, so it's clear what services are being provided by the school, by the CMO, to clear any conflicts of interest. There's a bunch of federal regulations tied to that, and just to ensure that the school maintains budget and personnel decision-making autonomy over all of those decisions. So that applicant scored 77 points on the rubric. So I want to pause there and open it up for any discussion or questions about the planning and implementation group.
We have a question with the Robert Brown scoring 77, so they were 3 points away from being passed. If they had scored 80, would they be on this list of recommended for approval, or would it have been they passed the rubric, but you're only giving, like, would they have been part of this 4 if they had had an 80?
Not necessarily. It's clearly stated in the application, and we've stated this in our trainings, that just scoring 80 points doesn't guarantee a subgrant awarding. So the answer to that is not necessarily. It would have been taking into account the totality of evidence that's provided and basically the strength of the application. So possibly, but I think there were other concerns that even if, it would depend on what concerns were addressed that got them to the 80.
When you mention the percentage of ED targeted students, is that so specific that it's actually their weighted lottery numbers? So if they say we're gonna serve 70% ED, does that mean their weighted lottery says 70% of the slots are gonna be reserved for economically disadvantaged? That makes sense?
Yeah, so we're basing it off of the enrollment projections that were submitted to us. Some applicants mentioned that they would have a weighted lottery, but they're projecting that they would serve over that. But typically, it's that percentage is a lot of times mirrors what the weighted lottery was presented as. And when it's not, there was a rationale behind why they would serve a higher percentage.
Okay.
And none of these schools have opened yet. What if they open with a much less ED projection?
So there will be stipulations as part of our monitoring that subgrant funding is contingent on meeting certain enrollment expectations, expectations of implementing the plan and things they said in their application that they're going to do. So there will be checkpoints along the way that if they're not meeting certain expectations, particularly around enrollment, that they're not guaranteed to continue to receive subgrant funding.
And the subgrant is given how? In incremental?
It's reimbursement based.
I'm sorry, what?
It's reimbursement based.
Oh, okay.
And over what period? Is it a lump sum that lasts over a period of time, or do they get a certain amount each year?
They have 5 years to spend the money. We will go off of what their budget says of how they plan to use the money. Most schools we'll typically expend most of it in years 1 to 3 of implementation. So it depends on what's in their budget. They have up to 5 years to spend it. There is a limitation on planning period. So for a school that for some reason may go into a delay, you do only have 18 months of planning period time. So going into a delay, which would be then 2 years of planning period time, would cause them to have to stop requesting funds until the school opens. And those are things that will be, flagged in part of our monitoring procedures. But they will present the budget and request reimbursement for however they plan to spend the money.
Did you say how much money the grants are?
Yes.
That portion was
So the
400.
planning and implementation is up to $400,000.
400,000. Okay, I got the 400.
Give me an
thought that
example,
was
Jay, of
much.
something that they could spend on the planning year.
So in the planning year, one of the major costs in the planning year is you can bring staff on board and pay salaries in the planning year. You cannot pay salaries in any of the implementation years. So that would be a big cost. Marketing costs would be large, professional development
to attract
costs.
those population.
Additionally, sort of some of that upfront capital around transportation, you can't spend money on school lunch programs.
Could they purchase a bus?
Yes.
Oh, so things like that.
So, there's going to be lots of interesting caveats as we move forward with this. I'm sure there's a lot of contingencies we have to think about, but let's say they're targeting 70% ED. We're still by law mandated to do a lottery. And if in the lottery there's not 70% that meet ED, would that kick them out of the program at some point? Do they just need to show they made a good faith effort to get that ED population, but because of a lottery, they weren't able to achieve that? Is that something, I guess we have to cross that bridge when we come to it?
Yeah, and I think that's something that we'll have to outline in our monitoring, sort of what are the levels of enrollments that are expected and what evidence are you providing to show that you've done everything possible to recruit that sort of, and, I think why, some of the questions that we would have outside of just monitoring and looking at the numbers are having the conversations with applicants about why was this proposed, and the evidence that you did provide, how is that not translating into the enrollment that you expect?
And then we've had a lot of debate last several years about defining economically disadvantaged. So is it going to be based only on free and reduced lunch qualification? Is it specified in here, or?
So
are there
we're
gonna be
going
other
by the
measures?
federal definition of educationally disadvantaged, which is students who are economically disadvantaged, English learners, students with disabilities, and homeless or unaccompanied youth. So those 4 subgroup categories.
Expand it.
Okay.
Okay.
Should we move on to the next?
Yeah, let's
group?
keep going.
Okay. So the next group is the implementation only subgrants. This is categories for schools that will enter years 1 to 3 of operation in the 2019-2020 school year. They're eligible for up to $250,000 of subgrant funding. We received 5 eligible applications for 2 available subgrants. And as I mentioned earlier, based on some of the strengths of the applicants in this category, and part of our larger revision, we are requesting 2 additional subgrants be awarded this year. So the 2 schools recommended for approval are Team CFA Bonnie Cone Classical Academy and Team CFA Community Public Charter. Both applicants scored 90 points on the rubric. They had very similar applications, I think, because part of the model is to provide a consistent support across schools in the network. They proposed a very comprehensive professional development plan and marketing strategy to recruit educationally disadvantaged students, as well as strong transportation and lunch plan services. The schools conditionally recommended for approval are East Voyager Academy and Tillery Charter Academy. East Voyager is proposing to serve a 48% ED student population by year 5, and they have a heavy emphasis on English learners because of the language immersion program that they're operating. The applicant plans to participate in the National School Lunch Program. I think they had a somewhat strong transportation plan. Some of those things will need to be addressed, and just as I mentioned earlier, we'll have conversations with all applicants about the specifics of their plans, but that applicant scored 86 points on the rubric. And Tillery Charter Academy plans to serve 50% educationally disadvantaged student population. They outlined a research-based curricula, a transportation plan very specific to their rural setting, and existing community partnerships that they have in place to support educationally disadvantaged student populations. They did budget a significant amount of non-CSP money for a school lunch plan, which was promising. Some of the questions from the review committee are how that plan becomes sustainable over the course of time, particularly with the large ED population. But that applicant scored 89 points on the rubric.
Jay, what was the score on the two Team CFA?
90.
Both of them.
And then Next Generation was not recommended for approval. They plan to serve a 95% educationally disadvantaged student population, which shows a very strong commitment to ED students in the community. However, generally the application lacks specifics and enough detail to determine the viability of the plan. More information was needed on the school lunch plan, how the education plan was specifically tailored around personalized learning to ED students, and how the ED student increase would impact the transportation plan of the school. And that applicant scored 76 points on the rubric.
Just elaborate again on the conditionally recommended. How is that going to come to the state board? When you say conditional, what do they have to meet in order to get the grant?
So they don't have to meet any standard. We would say right now, if the U.S. Department of Ed says you can give out 2 additional subgrants this year, we would say we are going to recommend both Team CFA schools, East Voyager, and Tillery Charter Academy.
So the conditional is on the approval for the feds to allow 4 instead of 2.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
We've submitted that, and we're waiting to get approval to see if there's any additional information that we need to submit. We understand that it's a pretty short timeline,
Yeah.
but we wanted to give the opportunity for this board to say that if you're going to go with this recommendation, that yes, we would recommend approval for those if allowable.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions on the implementation only group? Okay, the last group is the expansion group. This category is for high quality charter schools who have been in operation for at least 3 years and are seeking to expand enrollment. Schools are eligible to receive up to $600,000. And we received 2 eligible applications for 3 available subgrants in this category. So the 2 schools which are both being recommended for approval are the Explorers School, which is proposing to expand ED student enrollment from 22% to 32%. They presented a number of transportation options for students, as well as many current contracts and support organizations that are already available at the school, including Community Schools of Wake County. They had a strong commitment to racial equity and diversity by the board of directors and support from the school and family community. The applicant scored 85 points on the rubric. And Invest Collegiate Imagine is proposing to increase ED enrollment from 33% to 40%. The expansion also includes the addition of pre-K, and they provided a strong transportation plan that included busing to before and after school programming at the school, as well as a clear education support plan with a strong tutoring program. I think one of the concerns that will be addressed in conversations and budget approval, and this was true of, I think, some other schools as well, is it was unclear exactly who would be providing tutoring services. And while that's a very strong support, you cannot compensate teachers or officers of the school during implementation. So the question would be how that money is being used and who is being paid for tutoring services. But that applicant scored 80 points on the rubric.
So with the Explorers, were they just wanting to expand their ED population, or they want to expand the school itself?
They both applicants expanded full enrollment of the school as well.
Explorers, I don't know where they're gonna expand to.
I think they have a new they're getting a new facility, I believe.
They're moving?
New facility.
Wow. I've been to their school over there. It's unique.
Where is it?
Right over here in a little teeny old hotel or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right a couple blocks away.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions or discussion?
So, yeah, back to your last statement, then, you know, you can't use it for tutoring, you can't use it for
But you can
staffing.
use it for tutoring, you just can't pay current staff to provide the tutoring. You can bring in outside contractors to provide tutoring services.
So you'd have to hire a,
Correct.
okay.
Temporary.
Because I was gonna say, their grant's the largest, so how are they spending that money or proposing to spend that money?
Right. And one of the revisions that we've requested from the U.S. Department of Education is to give us more flexibility in the expansion category to go sort of between $400,000 and $600,000 to have some flexibility there. And then we've sort of bumped up some of the money that could be available in some of the other sub-grants.
How many people are gonna help you monitor this over the next, was it 5 years?
How many people?
How many staff now with OCS?
We will have 4 people on the Access Program team. We're in the process of going through the HR process to finalize our last staff member. So it'll be the 4 of us really handling the monitoring of all the sub-grant recipients.
Because, will we do this again next year for another group?
Yes, we'll go through an annual cycle of this for 5 years. And part of the state application that was written is hiring a contractor to provide an evaluation of our entire program.
Yeah, this money is coming from the federal government,
Correct.
but we have to pay for the people to work here to handle it, right?
No, part of
we
our
get
state
some
grant
money
is
from
the
part of the
is
grant.
hiring additional staff.
Okay,
Otherwise, we wouldn't,
wouldn't be
they
doing
wouldn't be
it.
able to have extra staff.
I was gonna say we couldn't afford it.
Right.
Just checking, wanna make sure.
Jay, you said eligibility requirement is for school to have an A or a B in the last 2 of the last 3 years.
Correct.
For next year's cycle, if a school is entering their 3rd year, but they've been an A or a B for 2 consecutive years, are they eligible?
Yes. Anything else?
Well, I just want to comment that when this grant was first announced and released in such a short timeline, you, Jay, and the staff that you work with have done a phenomenal job of getting the information out and getting so many applicants. I was really concerned about how many would apply, so hats off and congratulations on the job well done.
Thank you. And I will say, in a very short time, our team has already started recruiting for next year and putting the bug in people's ears that we've got a lot of money to give away. So people should
People
apply.
like to hear that.
Yes.
Yeah, there's some schools I thought would be on there, so.
I'm sorry?
There's some schools I thought that might be on here that are not, so.
So all of these schools have already asked for the weighted lottery. I know there are some on there that didn't initially have the weighted lottery, but now they have already requested and been approved for the weighted lottery.
They have not necessarily been approved for them. Many of them are going through the process right now.
Yeah.
So again, funding and those sorts of things are conditional on getting those things approved and
Right.
and having those things in place, knowing that they've passed the enrollment period for this upcoming school year. Anyway.
Okay. Very good. Thanks.
So I guess we have to vote on a recommendation to recommend this to the state board.
I make a motion that we accept the recommendations, from your office on the schools to receive the grants.
Linda Lynn, can we separate out that first group? Otherwise, I can't vote on any of it. If we,
Oh, okay, that's
that's
fine.
right.
yeah.
You wanna make the motion then?
Okay, I would move that we accept the implementation only expansion subgroup recommendations.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
I'll make a motion that
Joanna,
we
vote.
Lynn?
Lynn?
Can't vote.
Lynn gone. Oh, there she is.
I make a motion that we accept or recommend to the state board a group for planning and implementation.
I second it.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? All right,
Great, thank
great
you.
work.
Great job, guys.
Thank you.
Exciting.
And the fun has only begun.
That's what I was thinking.
We're clapping because it's lunch and it's ahead of time.
Trying to keep up with all this. all this money the government doesn't have.
Well, at least they gave their non-existent money to us.
Right. Pieces of paper.
Oh, God.
They've gone just a little bit more in debt.
Don't worry about it, they'll just print more money.
That's true. Well, I don't have to worry about it. It's my kids that are gonna have to worry about it.
I
You
know.
know, we can make it for
Just
my
print-
lifetime,
Just
maybe.
print more money. I had somebody tell me that one time. Don't worry, just print more money.
Only it worked that way.
I know.
Turning for lunch.
Max, we're good for lunch?
Yep. What's up?
Let's do it.